Chapter 13:26. Han Fei completely transformed into his original appearance, not suppressing his strength and spiritual energy at all, and showed himself to the figure who might be dead or alive. The green silk spirit was shocked. Are you King kidding me? Han Fei can transform into a sea demon? Wait. The green silk spirit soon realized that something was wrong. The venerables and even the kings might be watching this battle. Even if Han Fei had the ability to transform into a sea demon, where did he do it? Even the kings didn't notice it? Hiss! The green silk spirit's body trembled. It was not Han Fei who turned into the Fish Dragon King, but the Fish Dragon King itself was Han Fei? However, the Shuemu sky clearly saw Han Fei coming. The green silk spirit was confused again. Did Han Fei really have the ability to transform into a sea demon under the noses of so many strong masters? But whether the person in front of her was Han Fei or the Fish Dragon King, it showed that the other party was also frightened and accidentally wandered here. He even needed to transform into a human form to prove himself. But why did he transform into a human form to prove himself? Could it be that this old monster wouldn't attack him if he was a human? Han Fei was different from the green silk spirit. When he saw this desolate tomb, the first thing that came to his mind was the leader of the strong masters who fought against the dragons. After all, there were so many people, but there was only one tomb. Who else could be buried if not this big shot? Also, from the murals, it was clearly a battle between humans and dragons, and there was nothing to do with sea demons. He didn't even see the sea. This fully indicated that perhaps in that era, the sea demons hadn't grown up yet. Sure enough, when the person felt Han Fei's human bloodline, his throat made a few cracking sounds. Munch! The man looked at Han Fei while chewing a piece of lotus root, grinning from ear to ear. He was enjoying it so much that Han Fei felt that his blood was freezing. He had always been the one who ate other creatures as a feast. He couldn't allow other creatures to eat him as a feast. The figure seemed to be thinking and paused for 2 minutes. It was silent everywhere. As the saying went, opportunities were always in the hands of those who were prepared. So, with a shake of his hand, Han Fei threw out a serpent immediately. Solemnly, Han Fei pointed at the serpent and said, "Senior, you may not believe me. This junior has a premonition that we might meet a senior expert on this trip. That's why I've already prepared a large number of living beings to sacrifice to you. Look, this is the green-scaled flood dragon. Its meat is fresh and tender, its muscles and bones are complete, and the flood dragon's gallbladder hasn't even been plucked." Han Fei carefully glanced at the changes of the figure's body, but he only heard the sound of the throat moving. No response? Han Fei waved his hand again, and a 6-winged flying fish more than 30 meters long said, "Senior, this 6-winged flying fish has the most tender wings. If you only eat the wing, it will definitely be a delicacy." Baji. As Han Fei spoke, the figure bit off another lotus root with a crunch, and his eyes flickered. Han Fei thought to himself, there should be some hope. Given such an opportunity, Han Fei threw out 17 or 18 of them at once. "Senior, I know you're not satisfied. However, in order to prepare the best delicacies, I've traveled all over the world. Look, this lobster with a blue shell is an exotic creature. Look at this 8-tailed golden carp, whose meat is the freshest. This mixed yuan core mussel, with Shanghai willow juice, is so delicious that my teeth are going to ache." Baji. The figure raised his hand again and smacked his lip. However, this time, he didn't put his hand down. He bit down again and swallowed the whole lotus root. The green silk spirit trembled all over, thinking that this monster was going to eat her other leg. However, the figure let go of her hand and then reached out to grab a scarlet octopus, dragging it beside him. Han Fei thought to himself, there's hope. Sure enough, this figure loved delicious food. Who? Han Fei secretly breathed a sigh of relief. As long as you like to eat, there's nothing I can't do. However, before Han Fei dared to move, the green silk spirit wanted to escape with a swish. However, after she flashed for less than 100 meters, her last leg was suddenly grabbed by a big hand. However, she only saw that big, withered hand grab her again. Crack! With a soft cry of the green silk spirit, the last leg of her lotus root was pulled off. And the figure, with the octopus in his right hand and the lotus root in his left hand, still stood there, but his eyes seemed to have softened a little. Looking at the green silk spirit who was about to be eaten, Han Fei felt that his hands and feet were cold. He couldn't let himself be like the green silk spirit. Baji! 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 The silhouette ate the lotus root in one bite after another until it was all gone. In the midst of the green silk spirit's fear, he scooped up the green scale flood dragon from the pile of creatures that Han Fei had thrown out. The man stretched out his hand and took out the snake gallbladder that was bigger than a watermelon. Although the figure was just eating one bite at a time, Han Fei didn't even notice that this person was eating too fast. In just 2 hours, 3 of the creatures that he had thrown out, which were all 20 or 30 meters long, had already been eaten. Neither Han Fei nor the green silk spirit dared to speak. The green silk spirit really hoped that this monster would forget her. However, Han Fei saw that the figure's eyes seemed to be faintly bloodshot. He thought to himself, not good. His eyes had turned red. It couldn't be that his eyes had turned red from eating, right? Han Fei immediately asked cautiously, "Senior, is it enough? If it's not enough, can I get you some more?" The figure's mouth that was chewing suddenly stopped, his eyes flickered, and a gurgling sound came from his throat. Han Fei waved his hand again, and another 17 or 18 creatures were thrown out. He didn't dare to throw them all out at once, because he didn't know if this person would let him go after he threw them all out. Han Fei said, "Senior, don't panic. I'm looking for more. I remember that I prepared more than one sea-swallowing seashell." So Han Fei exclaimed from time to time, "Oh, Senior, I found 7 or 8 big sea cucumbers. This is definitely a great tonic and not easy to get. Oh, by the way, I also prepared dozens of aurora jellyfish for you, Senior. If they are cut into threads, they will taste crisp and delicious. Senior, I also have exotic starfish here. Their yellow aroma is tempting. Those who have eaten them all say they are delicious." As if by magic, Han Fei piled up 5 hills one after another, and a large number of creatures were placed in front of him. The green silk spirit was dumbfounded. "Are you here to hunt for treasures or to hunt? You're looking for treasure and exploring an island. Why do you bring so many things with you? What's wrong with you?" However, the green silk spirit was naturally happy. As long as this monster didn't eat her, everything would be fine. Although she was very sure that this Han Fei was definitely not the fish dragon king, so what? Even if they were enemies, so what? It was better than falling into the hands of this monster and being eaten. After all, the green silk spirit was also an expert on the heavenly talent list of the Baibei royal city, and could be said to rank 3rd. If he were to be eaten without knowing why, it would be too aggrieving. After throwing away a lot of things, Han Fei said slowly, "Senior, maybe I came in a hurry, so I may not have brought enough things. But don't panic, I came in a hurry this time and didn't bring enough gift. But..." Han Fei suddenly pointed at the green silk spirit and said, "But there are still 40 or 50 of such sea demons outside. Some of them are transformed from flood dragons, and some are mutated giant octopuses. They all have the sun-moon shells and eat a lot of treasures. Senior, do you think this is okay? I'll go out and hunt them for you right now. I guarantee that you'll be full." The green silk spirit's face changed greatly, and she cursed Han Fei, "I'm very valuable. You can exchange me for resources in the Baibei royal city, and take me away." Han Fei's face changed greatly. "Hey, little sea demon, what are you talking about? I, Han Fei, am the commander of the human race. I fight sea demons and slay dragons for the greater good of the world. Why would I team up with you for such a small profit? Senior, this demon is slandering me." Senior, you can kill her directly to prove that I, Han Fei, am a righteous person. Chilla. As soon as Han Fei said this, he saw the figure turn his head and look at the green silk spirit, which stunned her. In the next moment, before the green silk spirit had a chance to react, the figure pressed down with his huge hand and crushed the green silk spirit. Han Fei's heart trembled. Damn it, did you really kill her? What the F***ck? He was a prodigy who ranked highly in the Bai Bei kingdom. How could he die just like that? Chomp. The figure took another bite of the Overlord's squid, and said slowly in an unintelligible voice, "Go away and slay dragons." The old turtle stared at him for a long time and thought to himself, damn it, could it be that such a dignified expert was fooled just like that? Suddenly, a gate of light appeared behind Han Fei. Han Fei shivered all over and cupped his hands, saying solemnly, "Senior, don't worry. I've made an appointment with my friends to meet here on the grassland to trap and kill those sea demons as a small gift for you. Don't panic, Senior. It'll only take a few days." With that, Han Fei straightened his body and tried to walk unhurriedly to the light gate in a few steps. Swish. When Han Fei stepped out, he looked back, only to see that the grave was already 1,000 meters away. Han Fei blinked his eyes, but there was no sign of the grave on the grassland. Han Fei took a shivering breath. Who? F***ck, I'm so scared. Third update. Asking for votes. Asking for monthly votes tomorrow. More end of this chapter. Chapter 1327. After coming out, Han Fei's body immediately changed. Han Fei turned back into the Fish Dragon King. Han Fei asked, "Old Yuan, there's still something wrong with the heavenly secrets here, right?" The old turtle said, "Yes. That desolate grave should not have really left." Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. Fortunately, there were still a lot of creatures in Forge the Universe, but he couldn't give them to them now. He had to wait until he recovered his identity and killed all the creatures in the grave. Also, when the Life Queen came, he had to explain the situation to her as soon as possible. Han Fei guessed that even the Life Queen didn't know about this desolate grave. So Han Fei released Little Black and Little White. Little Black was thrown into Forge the Universe to prevent future troubles, and Little White was kept by his side to stay alert at all times. Outside the island, suddenly Chang Shui-Qin's eyes narrowed, and he took out a jade slip with a cold look. It was because this jade slip had already shattered too suddenly. The green silk spirit is dead? Chang Shui-Qin frowned slightly. There were 3 people on the grassland, namely the green silk spirit, the Fish Dragon King, and Tang Yu of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. In his eyes, the Fish Dragon King was trapped in a large array and couldn't be seen. And Tang Yu had actually lost his way when he was chasing Han Fei, and also fell into an array. In the eyes of outsiders, on that grassland, all 3 people were trapped in an array. But they were not in the same array, so it didn't make sense that anyone would die. Now that the green silk spirit suddenly died, Chang Shui-Qin couldn't help but doubt it. However, a mere incomplete ancient array might have some power, but it shouldn't be able to kill a heavenly talent like the green silk spirit. The Insect King seemed to have sensed Chang Shui-Qin's movement and seemed to have guessed something. He thought that the Fish Dragon King was a fake, so it was natural for it to kill the heavenly talents of the White Shell Kingdom. Although he also saw that the 3 people seemed to be trapped in 3 arrays, the 3 people had indeed disappeared in front of him. The people had already disappeared, so the Worm King began to doubt whether they were really in the formation. Suddenly, the Insect King, Chang Shui-Qin, and the others all raised their heads and looked at the sky. The thick fog was dissipating, and light penetrated the layers of clouds and fell on the grassland. Huh! Including the Life Queen and the White Armor Emperor, they all frowned. The White Armor Emperor froze for a moment, then smiled. There's primal chaos energy descending, along with the Taoist rhyme. To be able to cause a change in the weather, it seems like this person's great Tao is unobstructed and rather extraordinary. The Life Queen was expressionless because there was no one from the Shuemu heaven. There was no reason for her to be happy. However, Han Fei, who was on the riverside more than 2,000 kilometers away from the grassland, suddenly looked up into the sky. Han Fei seemed to be stunned for a while, and then he moved and quickly flew to the grassland. Originally, the Life Queen was only afraid that her purpose would be too obvious and highlight that grassland. However, the chaotic aura immediately gave the Life Queen an excuse. Han Fei had already been molded into the strongest prodigy of the Shuemu heaven, so he naturally discovered the unusual movements in the grassland easily. In fact, Han Fei was not the only one who discovered the abnormal weather on the grassland. Within a radius of 5,000 kilometers, the clouds and mist were broken, and at least 20 people discovered the abnormal weather on the grassland in the west. Zhang Fei Zhang, Tian. What a powerful Tao! Yang Ruoyun was running toward the grassland. Although she was in a sorry state and her battle suit was damaged, she was still running toward the grassland. Unlike the Yin-Yang heaven, most people didn't have a good understanding of Tao, so they thought it was a celestial phenomenon. However, those who lived in the Shuemu heaven knew that this was not the case when heavenly materials and earthly treasures appeared. The power that came from the sky could only be related to the great Tao. However, the great Tao wouldn't come suddenly, so someone might be comprehending the Tao. But why was that person comprehending the Tao? Was there something unknown on the grassland that could help people comprehend the Tao? That was the key. If one could comprehend the great Tao, they would have a chance to become a venerable. That was what these heavenly talents really wanted. In the center of the storm, Han Fei was looking up at the sky and talking to the old turtle. No, I didn't. I've already comprehended it. Is it the girl who chased me just now? The old turtle shook his head. It shouldn't be. This person seems to be comprehending the Tao too fast. At the beginning of the great Tao there was already chaotic qi. This is definitely not a minor Tao. Han Fei's face darkened. But there was no chaotic qi when I comprehended the Tao. What? Is my Tao a minor Tao? However, he heard the old turtle say, that's not the same. You've even comprehended the Taoist seed. Do you think the chaotic aura can compare to the Taoist seed? Your Tao should be more powerful than this. Han Fei was relieved to hear this. I knew I had a Tao seed. Hearing this, Han Fei was immediately confused. If it wasn't him, the green silk spirit had also died. Could it be that Tang Yu just now? Or was there someone else on this grassland? However, he felt that something was wrong, because the place where the light fell was a bit like the place where the barren grave disappeared just now. Han Fei couldn't help but take a breath. Old Yuan, do you think that figure just now hasn't recovered his strength? Is he just bluffing me? The old turtle said, there's no need to bluff you. Although that person may have decayed and existed for who knows how many tens of thousands of years, he is definitely a super strong master. Even I couldn't see through this person, which shows that this person's strength is definitely not to be underestimated. He can't be someone who hasn't entered the Tao, but what? The old turtle said, this may not necessarily be someone who has entered the Tao. The chaotic qi is descending, and although the Tao aura is also descending, it may also be returning. I guess that maybe you gave him too much food and now his strength is beginning to recover. Wow. Han Fei immediately took a breath. I didn't give much. Less than 200 creatures, half of which were below the Tao-seeking realm. In the end, Han Fei's voice became lower and lower. It seemed that he did give too much. There might not be much spiritual energy, but there was a lot of energy. Moreover, those who could catch his eye all had some ability after all. For such a strong master, it might be enough for them temporarily. Just like the old turtle, who didn't even have a body, he could kill a semi-venerable. Now he had Gue Sanqing's body. Although he had never seen Gue Sanqing exert its true strength, Han Fei felt that he could use it as a venerable in a real crisis. This power lasted for about half an hour. Less than half an hour after this power disappeared, Little White suddenly kissed Han Fei on the cheek. "Dad. Someone is coming." Han Fei raised his eyelids. "Do you know him?" Little White hummed and said in a childish voice, "There's something familiar on him." Han Fei's eyes lit up and he hurriedly said, "Is it the smell of the 10,000-year big red trunk? It's that piece of wood." Little White should be quite familiar with the 10,000-year big red trunk. He had used it too much before, and even the library of the Thug Academy was built with it. Little White rolled around and wagged its tail. "Yes, it's a piece of wood." Han Fei's heart immediately did a flip. "That's great." Han Fei was overjoyed. The Life Queen had finally arrived. He was about to be liberated. Han Fei was about to ask Little White to take the initiative to find her, when he suddenly saw a figure in red leisurely in his field of vision. That person was holding a long knife. It was Tang Yu. Han Fei was speechless. "Why is it you again?" Tang Yu frowned. She had lost him when she was chasing Han Fei just now. Although this person was not very strong, he couldn't be underestimated. She was a little slower than him. However, she had to find a way to kill him. After all, he was her mortal enemy. Tang Yu shouted, "This time, you can't run away." Swish! Swish! In an instant, one of them wielded a knife, and the other moved horizontally. Han Fei sneered. "You want to kill me? Wait until you can catch up with me first." Han Fei moved his feet, taking advantage of the chaos here, crossed a kilometer in a step, turned around, and stabbed out with the god-stunning spike. And Tang Yu was also not afraid of soul attacks, so she counterattacked with spiritual piercing. Bam! Their minds collided, and both of them felt dizzy, and there was a violent explosion between them. Cough! Tang Yu snorted, thinking that the strength of this fish dragon king seemed to be a little stronger than before. Gemini Divine Technique. Han Fei was waiting for this opportunity. Because the Gemini Divine Technique could only be used for a limited time, Han Fei used it as soon as he came out of the tomb. At this moment, Little White had already sensed the Life Queen's arrival, so she naturally had no scruples. But in the blink of an eye, Han Fei split into two, and the white mist immediately turned into a human. After turning into mist, Han Fei was no longer in human form, so he could turn into anything he wanted. And the black mist that Little Black turned into couldn't be seen by ordinary people at all. That was the principle that light couldn't be reflected by the naked eye, so Tang Yu didn't see two Han Feis at all from beginning to end. Han Fei quickly retreated to the Life Queen in the form of white mist while sneering. "Tang Yu, right? If you keep chasing me, don't blame me for killing you." Chapter 13:28. Tang Yu naturally wouldn't be threatened by Han Fei. After all, as far as she knew, although the Fish Dragon King was extremely strong, it was still weaker than her. On the grassland, Han Fei was using the close distance technique crazily. And Tang Yu seemed to be on a rampage, with a red mist spurting out of her body. This feeling was a bit like Xia Xiaochan's when she was on a rampage. If he guessed right, this woman's personality should be a bit similar to Xia Xiaochan's. The two of them crossed the grassland like two phantoms, smashing the grass and leaves on the entire grassland. If the picture was slowed down, one would see that Han Fei was as elegant as an immortal, using the fish dragon dance step. His figure was strange, and he could cross 1,000 meters with one step. And Tang Yu raised her knife and slashed, energy gushing out. Every slash was like cutting wheat. In an instant, thousands of meters of grassland were smashed. This scene was extremely beautiful, but it was also filled with great terror. Han Fei thought to himself, "Cut. If you can, just keep cutting. The existence of this dead spirit grass is to serve the one and only Almighty. If you cut down the entire grassland just like that guy just now, I don't believe that he won't eat you." The whole island was not big. This grassland covered an area of more than 1,000 kilometers. But on the grassland, space seemed to be changed, and it was easy to get lost. Therefore, people would feel that the grassland was extremely big. However, the grassland was only so big. Since the Life Queen was here, how could Han Fei not find it? In Tang Yu's eyes, the Fish Dragon King was fighting with her. However, close to the ground, in the air waves caused by their battle, a black shadow that was almost non-existent was also rushing at an extremely fast speed. Even if Little Black wasn't so black, ordinary people wouldn't see it. Han Fei, who used the Gemini Divine technique, inherited the same characteristic. The battle between the two seemed to be extremely fierce, but in fact, they only cut down a large piece of grassland. Suddenly, Tang Yu swept his gaze around and saw a figure standing in the grassland with a smile on his face. Han Fei. Immediately, Han Fei and Tang Yu separated, both of them as if they were facing a formidable enemy. The newcomer was naturally Han Fei, the insect man. Everything was going according to plan. Therefore, Han Fei had been leading Tang Yu here. The Life Queen, you're quite fast. This place is chaotic, yet you were able to find me so quickly. Han Fei didn't have time to chat with the Life Queen, so he replied directly, 2 things. There was an ancient desolate tomb in this grassland, and there was a dragon slayer expert inside. Was it a corpse or a living person? I've stalled him for the time being. The second thing is that the black fog beneath your feet is mine. Bugman Han Fei's expression remained unchanged, but his heart was in turmoil. There are tombs on the grassland? How come I didn't know? Different from Han Fei's thoughts, the Life Queen's first thought was that if there was really a place that she couldn't find, it could only mean that the hidden existence was at least stronger than her in terms of strength. It was definitely above the level of a king. In other words, he had borrowed the power of the formation. However, judging from Han Fei's tone just now, could this ancient existence slay dragons? What kind of expert was this? What method did Han Fei use to stall him? At this moment, she didn't feel any residual Taoist aura from Han Fei or Tang Yu. That meant that the chaotic energy and Taoist aura that descended just now didn't come from these two people, but had something to do with that tomb. The Life Queen suddenly took a breath. You mean, someone is reviving? Han Fei nodded. Yes, that person should be a human. But now is not the time to talk about this. As he spoke, Han Fei held the knife in one hand and looked down, but he didn't see anything at first. However, as soon as the Life Queen thought of something, Han Fei's black fog body was discovered. The Life Queen was a little surprised. What kind of technique is Han Fei using? Is it a misty avatar? But why do I feel that there is a trace of Taoist aura on this black fog? Han Fei said, Now, can the outside world see what this grassland looks like? The Life Queen nodded. I can. Allow me to give the Fish Dragon King a chance to leave. Maybe because Han Fei and the others fought very far away, or maybe the desolate tomb could easily envelop Han Fei and the others again, the outside world could see them at this moment. From the beginning of the battle just now, in the eyes of outsiders, Tang Yu first left the array, then met Han Fei and then fought again. Of course, during this period, some scenes were hidden. For example, Han Fei disappeared for a while. It could be said that even the Life Queen and the White Armor Emperor couldn't see through the mystery of this grassland. And at this moment, Tang Yu, Han Fei, and the Fish Dragon King met. In the eyes of a group of venerables, these people were the representatives of the three forces. According to common sense, under such circumstances, it was difficult for them to fight. After all, in terms of strength, Han Fei should be the strongest. However, in their cognition, even if he was strong, his strength should only be limited and not too exaggerated. In fact, they didn't know that Han Fei's strongest state had already reached the semi-venerable level. Han Fei shouted, Tang Yu, let's put aside the grudges between us. Let's join hands and deal with Han Fei together. Tang Yu narrowed his eyes slightly and didn't speak with a cold face. On the long knife in his hand, demonic energy was rolling, as if he was thinking. Han Fei smiled lightly and said, Tang Yu? Shuemu Heaven and the Blood Sea Divine Wood City have never fought. I don't want to kill you, but this Fish Dragon King will die today. If you want to, you can join hands. If you don't want to, you can leave or watch the show. If you join hands with him, then don't blame me for being ruthless. Tang Yu was slightly taken aback. If I watch the battle, aren't you afraid that I will attack you? Han Fei grinned. If you want to attack, you can come at any time. Hearing this, Tang Yu's heart trembled slightly. This person is so arrogant. He even ignores my existence? He is not afraid that I will join hands with the Fish Dragon King. This also means that he has absolute confidence that he can kill me and the Fish Dragon King. As a heavenly talent, Tang Yu also had his own pride. At this time, he was very dissatisfied. After all, this Fish Dragon King has a big grudge against me. Watching him being killed by others, but I can only watch from the sidelines and can't do anything? Wouldn't that be admitting my cowardice? What's the difference between that and insulting me? Tang Yu said coldly, the Fish Dragon King has a big grudge against me. I also want to attack. Why don't you and I join hands? Han Fei's white mist body immediately shouted, ridiculous. Tang Yu, you and I are equally strong. If I die, you will be his next target. Han Fei looked at Tang Yu and said, me? I don't have a problem with that. If you think I will kill you, you can leave now. He had to admit that the Life Queen had portrayed Han Fei's temperament to perfection. It was even a little higher than Han Fei's. Although she spoke in a soft voice, her temperament was full of arrogance. Seeing this scene, Han Fei was taken aback. Damn, this acting is really awesome. Tang Yu grinned. Kill. Swish. At the moment when Tang Yu rushed out, Han Fei used the close distance technique to escape. He chose to escape first. After all, he had to pretend. Han Fei's speed was no slower than the close distance technique. When the Insect Queen gave birth to this Insect Man, the Life Queen had specially told the Insect Queen to focus on speed and convenience. God-stunning stab. Knock on the heavenly gate. Han Fei burned 200 years of vitality and attacked with all his might. His strength suddenly soared. Seeing this scene, the Life Queen was speechless. She couldn't help but say to Han Fei via voice transmission, you burned your vitality, but didn't I give it to you? Is vitality free? Han Fei couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. After all, I have to act. Han Fei said, it's okay. I have other ways to make up for it. Anyway, Han Fei's soul was missing so much. A mere 200 years of vitality was nothing to him. When he absorbed the soul, he could also steal some vitality back. It was the best of both worlds. Han Fei, who was burning his vitality, looked very strong. He even blocked the draw technique. His movement technique shifted in the void, as if he was dodging the void lines. Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. The Life Queen's imitation is so good. She can even imitate my void lines? Although he could feel that these threads were different from his void lines, it at least showed that the Life Queen had noticed him before and noticed the existence of the void lines. The three of them fought as they walked. The Fish Dragon King was fleeing, and Han Fei was chasing it quickly. To Han Fei's surprise, the Life Queen also knew the Heavenly Void Divine walking technique, which really shocked Han Fei. The closed distance technique and the Heavenly Void Divine walking technique appeared at the same time, and the two figures flickered across the grassland. In less than 100 seconds, Tang Yu suddenly withdrew her knife. She didn't want to kill the Fish Dragon King anymore. She just wanted to catch up with the two of them because they were too fast. In the outside world, Chang Shuai-Qin frowned. The Fish Dragon King had tried to soar into the sky 3 times, but it was directly smacked down by Han Fei before it could reach that height. Chang Shuai-Qin couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. It wasn't that the Fish Dragon King was weak, but that Han Fei was too strong. In fact, when Han Fei challenged Zhang Xiaotian in the Baibei Kingdom, he didn't use his full strength. At this moment, after using the Gemini Divine technique, his strength was only about 70% of before. However, because he burned his vitality, he could replenish some of his combat power. At this moment, Han Fei was almost fully exerting the Fish Dragon King's close-distance technique to the extreme. If he was any stronger, he would have exceeded the growth limit of the Fish Dragon King in a short period of time. Even so, the Fish Dragon King played by Han Fei was still bombarded by Han Fei. Bam! Han Fei blasted a big hole in the ground. He lifted his feet and flew a kilometer in one step. The Bugman, Han Fei, waved the draw technique and was about to hit Han Fei, but the latter used the close-distance technique again and pulled away. The battle outside was very intense. In Forge the Universe, Yuan Dao stood in front of the Fish Dragon King, holding 3 red balls in his hand, which made the Fish Dragon King's blood freeze. The Fish Dragon King roared, "Han Fei, what the hell do you want?" In Forge the Universe, Han Fei's voice sounded leisurely. "You don't want to eat them? Fish Dragon King, now there are only 2 paths for you to choose. 1, you die, and after you die, everything will be white. The other, you eat these red balls. After eating them, with your talent, you will become a top heavenly talent in the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. You will also be a heavenly talent, and you also have the possibility of becoming a venerable. My time is limited. I will give you 10 seconds. After 10 seconds, the Fish Dragon King's face was twisted and he struggled. Is this what a King human should do? Han Fei added, me. By the way, after eating them, you have to give me a strand of your essence, blood and soul. What are they for? You should know. Think about it. As long as you can survive, everything is possible. Think about it. Chapter 1329. The Fish Dragon King had mixed feelings. On the one hand, he couldn't go back to the Baibei royal city. Han Fei had raised his strength too much, which was already comparable to Zhang Xiaotian's. At this rate of growth, it wasn't something that his bloodline could support at all. Although the Fish Dragon King was proud, who didn't want to live? After taking the red ball, he would just become a Millennium Snapper and a woman. But he was a fish. For fish, the boundaries of gender were not very clear. Therefore, it was not difficult to make a choice. As for his blood essence and soul, if Han Fei really hid in the Blood Sea Divine Wood City, Han Fei wouldn't be able to come in. In this way, he wouldn't be able to control his life and death through his blood essence and soul. He knew this much better than Yu Kaling and Lan Shui. Beyond a certain range, this kind of control would become extremely weak. Originally, the Fish Dragon King wasn't so loyal to the Baibei royal city. They were all sea demons, but they were just sucked in. If he could become a top heavenly talent in the Blood Sea Divine Wood City, that didn't seem too bad. As for his status, it wouldn't be reduced much. The Fish Dragon King said, "Okay, I'll eat it." However, Han Fei said, "I'll give it to you later. Let me think about it." The Fish Dragon King was anxious. The red ball that was about to be delivered to his mouth was taken back by Han Fei. He thought Han Fei was going to go back on his word. Immediately, the Fish Dragon King shouted in a low voice, "Han Fei, you promised me that you would let me go." Yuan Dao stepped on the Fish Dragon King. "Don't talk. Let me think about it." The Fish Dragon King, outside Forge the Universe. While escaping, Han Fei said to the Life Queen, "Wait a minute. I'll die in 10 minutes. I sense the aura of an acquaintance." Not far away, Yang Ruoyun had been smelled by Han Fei as soon as she entered the grassland. After all, Han Fei now had Little White's sense of smell. Yang Ruoyun thought she was very careful. Before entering this grassland, she had calculated carefully. As the saying went, fortune is found in danger. In the past 6 months, her life in the Blood Sea Divine Wood City wasn't good, and she was still the one being ostracized. This grassland might be dangerous, but he had already set up a directional teleportation array outside. If anything went wrong, he could simply tear the fish skin and teleport himself back. Yang Ruoyun believed that she had been through hundreds of battles and had experienced all kinds of situations. In the end, she had also walked through all of them. But this time, they met Han Fei here. That guy had now become the strongest genius of the Waterwood Heaven and had even transcended his tribulation. His strength was strong, and his growth was so fast that it made him gasp in amazement. Over the past 2 days, he had gained quite a lot and even obtained some ownerless souls. However, none of this was enough. What he needed was a leap in growth, a growth that could support him to transcend the tribulation. Suddenly, Yang Ruoyun heard a voice. Yang Ruoyun, what a coincidence! I didn't expect that we would meet again after so many years. Buzz. But at that moment, Yang Ruoyun was so shocked that her blood froze that she was about to open the fish skin and escape. She thought to herself, Han Fei really pretended not to know me before. Wait a minute. Let's cooperate. Bang! As soon as Han Fei said cooperate, he heard a roar in the distance. The runes on Yang Ruoyun's body lit up, and she lay down in the grass, hiding. Following the sound, Yang Ruoyun responded, What do you want? Han Fei's voice was leisurely. I'll give you a big gift. The Fish Dragon King has been seriously injured by me and is dying. You can take the opportunity to ambush and kill it, but you have to promise me one thing. Yang Ruoyun didn't know what Han Fei was up to. Kill the Fish Dragon King? Would he give her such a good thing? Besides, if Han Fei could kill the Fish Dragon King, wouldn't it be easier for him to kill her? Han Fei said, Don't worry. If I wanted to kill you, I wouldn't even talk to you. You have already been hunted by me. Come to think of it, with your personality, your loyalty to the Blood Sea Divine Wood City is not very high. It's better for us to benefit from each other. Yang Ruoyun frowned. Han Fei was right. With Han Fei's current strength, he wanted to hunt her? It was really not a big problem. Originally, she wouldn't have participated in this trial at all. The reason why she was also on the trial list was that some people wanted to kill her and some people wanted to see if she was worth training. All parties had different purposes which led her to this damn place. But since she was here, this was an opportunity. Judging from Han Fei's words, he actually wanted to do something to the Blood Sea Divine Wood City? Yang Ruoyun asked, What's the matter? Well, that's fine. Here's the thing, Han Fei quickly said a few words and Yang Ruoyun was shocked. You want me to be a traitor? Han Fei said, Don't make it sound so bad. What do you mean by a traitor? You are a human being. Even if you become a Millennium Snapper, can you really integrate into the Blood Sea Divine Wood City? Is there really no one oppressing you? However, from another point of view, you sacrificed yourself heroically for mankind and national righteousness, incarnated as a sea demon, and joined the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. How touching is that? This can be written into a moving story to inspire future generations. How can you describe it as a traitor? Shallow, simply too shallow. Yang Ruoyun rolled her eyes. Han Fei was still as proud and conceited as before. On this dangerous island, he only met her for the first time? And he even schemed against the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. Han Fei said, There are only 10 seconds left. The Fish Dragon King is dying. It only needs one last strike. Are you really not going to think about it? If you don't think about it, run. Otherwise, after I kill the Fish Dragon King, I will kill you next. Yang Ruoyun, bam, bam, bam. Yang Ruoyun suddenly raised her head, only to see that in the air, like a firecracker, the Fish Dragon King was bombarded by Han Fei from a height of 30,000 meters, like a meteor or a big fireball. Han Fei shouted, The top heavenly talent of the Baibei royal city is in a mess. Yang Ruoyun looked at this scene dumbfounded. She had personally experienced how strong the Fish Dragon King was. To be honest, with the Fish Dragon King's strength, it shouldn't be a problem for it to easily beat 2 or 3 of her. However, at this moment, Han Fei was beating the Fish Dragon King as if he was a fish. He swept the Fish Dragon King casually. Yang Ruoyun thought that Han Fei was doing this for her. Her heart sank and she had to consider Han Fei's opinion again. As Han Fei said, she was indeed ostracized in the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. Not to mention herself, the Millennium Snappers she brought from the Enyang Sky Level 3 fishery were now all gone. Not many of them were still alive. Although her parents were still alive, their aptitude was limited, and it was hard to say whether they could protect their master or not. Yang Ruoyun couldn't help but say, "Okay, we can cooperate." In fact, how long could they fight in a mere 1,000-kilometer radius? It had only been about 10 minutes since Han Fei found the Bugman. If Yang Ruoyun hadn't appeared on this grassland, Han Fei wouldn't have cared. Because he had the Fish Dragon King, he could negotiate with the Fish Dragon King, and he could also enter the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. Now, with Yang Ruoyun, he just had one more choice. At that time, even if one plan failed, he still had another plan. At this moment, Han Fei, dripping with blood, shouted, "Han Fei, I'm going to bury you with me." Bam! 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 Small holes exploded on Han Fei's body, and demonic energy and blood energy intertwined. He roared fiercely and exerted the power of the Great Path. Han Fei roared, "Knock on the heavenly gate." In this blow, Han Fei combined all his demonic energy, blood energy, and even spiritual power into one blow. Then, with the power of the Great Path, he made this power 30% stronger out of thin air. It could be said that if the real Fish Dragon King really used this move, it should be able to resist a blow from him. Gotcha! The red spear in Han Fei's hand suddenly shattered and melted into this last blow. A shocking spear shadow suddenly condensed in the air. Outside, Changshu Qin's pupils constricted. He felt that this blow of the Fish Dragon King was comparable to the 9 bloody spears. It turned out that the Fish Dragon King could really grow to Zhang Xiaotian's level? The Insect King frowned slightly. This boy is not bad, but he's still not good enough. Suddenly, just when the Venerables were about to see the result, they suddenly saw a rune arrow suddenly appear. When they took a closer look, it turned out to be a small branch. It was a high-quality divine weapon, which was thrown out by Yang Ruoyun. Puff! The small branch suddenly pierced through the Fish Dragon King's back and directly through his chest. Yang Ruoyun reached out and grabbed a sun moon shell, and then a fish skin map had already appeared in the air. Rumble! A terrifying explosion swept over 100 kilometers, shaking the grass and creating ravines. The prairie was crushed for nearly 100 kilometers. At the last moment, to everyone's surprise. Although they had already seen Yang Ruoyun ambushing there, they didn't expect Yang Ruoyun to be so decisive and attack. The Fish Dragon King's peak blow didn't even hit Han Fei and was killed by a sneak attack, which was a bit frustrating. Swish! At the moment when Yang Ruoyun disappeared, Han Fei the Insect Man suddenly appeared and reached out to grab nothing, but he caught nothing. Han Fei the Insect Man stood quietly in midair with his hands behind his back and a cold smile on his lip. He seemed to be angry that Yang Ruoyun robbed him of his prey. Gotcha! Changshu Qin took out a jade slip and clenched it in his palm. Of the top 10 heavenly talents, the Fish Dragon King and the Green Silk Spirit, who ranked second and third, were both killed. If Zhang Xiaotian couldn't get that opportunity, the White Shell Royal City would suffer a heavy loss this time. Humph! The White Armor Emperor's face was slightly dark and his eyes flickered. Han Fei Muwuhua, you must protect him. Don't give me a chance. The Life Queen's voice was indifferent. Why? You're a king. Do you want to do it yourself? Yunchu, on the other hand, was surprised. Yang Ruoyun could sneak attack the Fish Dragon King? However, the sneak attack and escape just now happened in the blink of an eye. She also snatched the Sun Moon shell of the Fish Dragon King. Her timing was simply perfect. If she had been one step slower, she would have been captured by Han Fei. This time, Yunchu secretly remembered that Yang Ruoyun did have some redeeming qualities. At least few people could match her courage. Yang Ruoyun's action of snatching food from a fish's mouth was enough to impress many people. Inside Forge the Universe, Han Fei appeared in the white mist. He looked at the fish dragon king, whose body was wriggling into a big red fish, and couldn't help but be amazed. What a terrifying fruit! Chapter 1330. At this moment, in the eyes of outsiders, the invincible heavenly talent of the Baibei royal city, the fish dragon king, was defeated by Han Fei of the Shuemu heaven. This undoubtedly imprinted Han Fei's name in the eyes of these strongest people. Except for the people of the Shuemu heaven, from the kings to the half-kings to the powerful venerables, they all felt that this man was too powerful and deserved to be killed. In Forge the Universe, the Fish Dragon King had turned into a Millennium Snapper, but Han Fei casually threw a holy light technique at it. Can you hear me? You should be able to transform into a human. The huge Millennium Snapper that had just transformed was wrapped in a cloud of flame mist. After a while, when a hand stretched out of the red mist, Han Fei had goosebumps all over his body. The Fish Dragon King's powerful palm had turned into a slender white hand. This scene made Han Fei feel better. This was much more perfect than that surgery. Slender white hands, white and tender embroidered legs, a red gauze dress, and elegant long hair. Han Fei saw a woman whose face was slightly similar to the Fish Dragon King, but she was almost like a completely different person. Han Fei bet that even a king would never believe that this woman in front of him was the once arrogant and almost moldy Fish Dragon King if he didn't deliberately think about it. It hurts my eyes. It hurts my eyes. Han Fei said, "Give me a wisp of your essence, blood and soul." The Fish Dragon King opened his mouth slightly and said in a crisp and pleasant voice, "Will you let me go after I give it to you?" Han Fei said, "I will let you go, but not now. In a few more days, you will shine in the Blood Sea Heavenly Wood City." Outside Forge the Universe, the Life Queen stood on the grass, surrounded by a little black mist, which everyone thought was some kind of power of Han Fei. However, even the White Armor Emperor didn't notice it. Under his nose, not only was Han Fei a fake, but there was also a living life, which he didn't even notice. After all, he was in the outside world. The Life Queen asked, "What kind of technique is this? A clone technique shouldn't be so strong, let alone have such a strong soul power." Han Fei grinned. "It's just a little distraction technique." "That junior sister?" Suddenly, Han Fei felt that Bugman's pressure sank and his face became colder. He heard a voice in his heart, "I'll give you another chance to organize your words." Han Fei didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was probably the most cowardly senior brother in the entire universe. A dignified senior brother could only forcefully treat himself as a junior brother. Han Fei went straight to the point. Cough, cough, well, do you have any way to conceal the heavenly secrets? If I don't hide it from the heavens, how are we going to exchange? The Life Queen said, "I never intended to trade with you in the first place. I'll take you out with the hidden flower technique." The Life Queen raised her hand slightly, revealing a ring on her finger. Han Fei waited for about 5 seconds in the form of a black fog. Suddenly, he heard the Life Queen say, "No, the heavenly secrets here are out of control." Han Fei didn't feel good. He thought to himself, "Are you reliable or not? You are a king, after all. And now you're telling me that you can't control the heaven's secrets here?" Han Fei asked, "I can't, can I?" The Life Queen said, "I gave a wisp of my soul to the Insect Queen's body and completely fused with it. I've already sealed some special powers. However, it doesn't work now. There's something wrong with this grassland too." Han Fei was speechless. "Didn't you find anything wrong with this grassland when you looked at it before?" The Life Queen seemed to be thinking, "Did this matter go beyond my expectations?" In the end, the Life Queen's voice slightly froze. "No." In Han Fei's heart, the old turtle's voice sounded. "Don't think about it. The one in the tomb has obviously woken up. If it's not an accident, his strength is rapidly recovering. The aura of this area has been completely taken back by him." Han Fei said, "It can't be. You said that he can recover quickly after eating those things." "I can believe that, But that doesn't mean he can immediately control a world, right? Even if he didn't waste any spiritual energy or energy, those foods can't do that, can they? The old turtle said, "Don't forget, where are you? This is the dead spirit grass. Such a field of dead spirit grass may also be part of his body. Do you still think it's difficult for him to control a world?" The Life Queen seemed to want to try again, but Han Fei said, "I'm afraid that person has taken action." The Life Queen asked, "Are you talking about the person in that desolate tomb?" Han Fei nodded. "Yes, but he hasn't come out yet. I'm afraid that if you want to leave this grassland, you'll need that person's permission." Han Fei thought to himself, "I've been running for so long, but I haven't seen the edge of the grassland. This is enough to prove that there's something wrong with the space of this grassland." The Life Queen said, "I'm just a wisp of divine sense. It's already extremely difficult for me to deceive the White Armor Emperor. This time, if I search for the tomb you mentioned, I'm afraid I'll be discovered." Han Fei's heart did a flip. "I have an idea." After a moment, the Life Queen looked at the large pile of pots and pans in front of her and felt uncomfortable. She had never cooked in her entire life. After all, she was a plant life and didn't need to deliberately eat and drink. In the outside world, Changshui Qin and the Insect King were dumbfounded. What is Han Fei doing? Is he confused? The Life Queen waved her hand, and a big octopus more than 50 meters long and a mystifying horned dragon more than 30 meters long landed on the grassland. According to Han Fei's instructions, the Life Queen took out a sledgehammer and hammered out a big iron plate. Hum, swish, swish, swish. Immediately, the infinity water appeared, and the million knife art twisted. In an instant, the big octopus and the mystifying horned dragon were dismembered. Especially the octopus tentacles, they were cut into strips the size of a little finger by Han Fei. Whoop! Spiritual fire burst out, and the whole big iron plate was burned red. Han Fei shouted in his heart, "Yes, boil 100 spiritual fruits with spiritual spring water, add some seasonings. If there's no seasoning, replace it with seaweed juice." On the big iron plate, fish oil was brushed over and over again. In midair, the spiritual spring water stirred the spiritual fruit juice, which dripped on the iron plate like rain. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The spiritual spring seasoning and the iron plate collided with each other, making a sizzling sound. In an instant, the fragrance overflowed and drifted for thousands of kilometers. The Life Queen looked at the octopus and the mystifying horned dragon on the iron plate, which was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside, accompanied by the fragrance of seaweed, and asked in her heart, "Are you sure this food can summon that person?" Just as the Life Queen finished speaking, she suddenly turned around and looked at a barren grave 1,000 meters away. She didn't know when it had appeared. As soon as Han Fei saw the grave, he immediately transformed from the black mist into a human, and a white mist appeared out of thin air. The two instantly merged and turned into Han Fei's appearance. The Life Queen was shocked. There really was a barren grave here. Moreover, as soon as this grave appeared, the heavenly secrets were instantly concealed here. This was too simple. She looked at Han Fei again and thought to herself, that white mist should be the body of the fish dragon king that has just been strangled. The Life Queen was shocked again. He was indeed a person with great luck. He even had this kind of opportunity. At this moment, Han Fei had completely returned. He cupped his hands at the barren grave and said, "Senior, this food is specially given to you by me. Now, the sea demons are strong, the human race is weak, and the strong forces outside the island are eyeing us covetously. Just now I was just putting on a show." As he spoke, Han Fei said to the Life Queen in his heart, "Step back, leave the barbecue to him." The Life Queen frowned. "Will he come out?" Han Fei said, "I don't think so." Seeing the two of them step back, the area around the iron plate began to slowly collapse. The entire iron plate, together with the sizzling squid and the sizzling dragon meat, sank into the grassland. Han Fei cupped his hands. Senior, you can wait a little longer. When more and more people come to this grassland, I will definitely give them all to you. Crack! A crack appeared on the barren grave, and fish bones were thrown out of the grave. Cracking sounds came from inside, as if from the depths of hell. The voice was hoarse. Those who are not my race will be slaughtered. The Life Queen's pupils constricted slightly. The person in the grave was so domineering. Was he going to kill even her? Hearing this, Han Fei hurriedly said, Senior, humans, demonic plants, and insects have been on good terms for generations. Only those sea demons are the great enemies of the human race and all races. The person in the grave was silent for a long time. Where are the dragons? Han Fei was stunned for a moment. The dragons that you mentioned, Senior, may have been gone long before the Age of Gods. The Life Queen looked at Han Fei in surprise. Dragons? Age of Gods? What are you talking about? There was no telling if the expert in the grave had recovered a little, but after a while, he said in a hoarse voice, There is Dragon Chi on the island. Great benefits from it. While saying this, Han Fei had already seen a figure in the crack of the desolate grave. The figure stood at the entrance of the crack and seemed to be looking at the sky. Blazing pillars of light penetrated the clouds and shone on the grave. The Life Queen said in surprise, Great Tao Mending? Are you a king? That silhouette suddenly popped out a palm from the desolate grave. Was it trying to come out? However, what Han Fei didn't know was that at this moment, the White Armor Emperor and the Life Queen reached out to grab the seal on the grassland. The Life Queen stretched out her hand and took out a red flower. The evil on this grassland has been discovered. I've already taken action. It's a pity to abandon this body. Put it away and take it back. Open your soul and let me in. Han Fei immediately said, Don't go in. You can't leave if you come in. Han Fei hurriedly stopped her and stomped on the ground, and the illusion of mountains and rivers appeared. Han Fei said, Come in here. My teacher's reincarnation is also here. The Life Queen was slightly taken aback, but didn't refute. She let the illusion of mountains and rivers envelop her and disappeared in the next moment. Crack, crack, crack. When only Han Fei and the grave were left, Han Fei quickly turned around. Senior, there are two kings outside. The woman is on our side, and the man is on the sea demon's side. Giggle! The hand that the figure had just stretched out began to shatter, and a gurgling sound came from the figure's throat. One day, I will return. Chapter 1331. Han Fei watched the grave closing. The next moment, the grave inexplicably appeared 1,000 meters away from him. Then, it disappeared. Han Fei suddenly raised his head, only to see a big hand pressing down and green vines stabbing at him. The White Armor Emperor and the Life Queen took action at the same time, forcibly breaking the rules here. As a result, the two of them saw Han Fei looking at the sky with a dumbfounded expression. The Life Queen shouted, Stop! The White Armor Emperor shouted in a low voice, Who is interfering with the rules here? As he spoke, a wisp of power seemed to overflow from the White Armor Emperor and swept across the grassland. Bam! Han Fei was protected by a petal. On the other side, red light bloomed, and Tang Yu, who was still looking for the Fish Dragon King, was protected by the red light. Immediately afterward, a terrifying power burned across 1,000 kilometers of the wasteland in an instant. The grassland was burned to ashes in an instant. Even the ground was filled with ravines. Han Fei could clearly sense that a large number of dead spirit grasses were withering and withering. The Life Queen shouted coldly, White Armor Emperor, you're a king. Don't be so shameless. In the void, a voice echoed, White Armor Emperor, are you bullying the Blood Sea Divine Wood City? The White Armor Emperor snorted coldly. Some kind of power is recovering on this island. I don't believe you didn't see it. That's the power of a king. Han Fei's heart turned cold. A king wants to kill me first? That's too king much. I'm only an explorer, not even a venerable one. You, a king, want to attack me? Is that right? Fortunately, the Life Queen saved me. But now there was a Life Queen. What about the future? If I really encounter a king-level powerhouse in the future, how can I escape from the other party? Han Fei's face was ugly, and the power around him gradually disappeared. What was left was not a grassland at all. It was simply scorched earth. The old turtle said, "Huh? That grave seems to have left?" Han Fei was dumbfounded. Where can it go in such a big place? The old turtle suddenly said, "Who knows? You didn't move this time, but heaven's secret concealed you, so it attracted the attention of the outside world. However, I didn't expect that the king would test it in person. This grave must have revealed a trace of power. Otherwise, a king wouldn't have to personally make a move." Han Fei. After a long silence, Han Fei said leisurely, "Old Yuan, tell me, did I wake him up by feeding him?" He heard the old turtle growl. "This emperor has seen shameless people, but I have never seen someone as shameless as you. Although an expert of that level might be slightly weaker than me, how could he wake up just because of a little bit of your food? Naturally, he had already woken up when this island was born. You're giving him food? Why wouldn't they eat it?" Han Fei scratched his head. "Anyway, I think it's good to be a chef. At every critical moment, he would always be able to save lives. I really want to become a chef." The old turtle, shwa shwa. As the grassland was being burned, Tang Yu chased him to a kilometer away. Without the obstruction of the grassland's spatial laws, she naturally found this place immediately. However, when Tang Yu saw Han Fei standing alone on the scorched grassland, he felt a chill in his heart and immediately fled. Actually, you should listen to the Fish Dragon King. Shwa. Han Fei's figure disappeared with a swish. His speed was a little faster than that of the bugman Han Fei showed earlier, but the difference was not very big. It seemed that because of the strange disappearance of the grassland, Han Fei was a little freer. Tang Yu was horrified. Seeing that Han Fei chased after her without hesitation, she immediately shouted and launched a secret method. Red mist spurted out from her body, and her blood and strength soared. A flash of white light cut through the void with a swish. The opponent's knife seemed to be trying to cut Han Fei's soul. Han Fei sneered. "Cut me? Are you qualified?" Sacrificing punch. The blazing fist mark and the red light broke through the air. Han Fei flashed in the air with a swish. In his hand, a long rod had appeared out of nowhere. If it wasn't a fishing rod, what else could it be? Han Fei threw the hook, and the hook was like a sharp arrow. Tang Yu's long knife shook and thousands of knife shadows left her body. But the fish hook suddenly broke through the air halfway and appeared directly dozens of meters in front of her. On the Shuemu Heaven side, very few people used fishing hooks to fight directly, and very few even fished. Therefore, Tang Yu didn't even know the fishing rod in Han Fei's hand, so it was a little difficult for her to deal with it. In fact, Han Fei's void lines had already bloomed, almost blocking the surrounding space. The fish hook was just a visible trick. When the void lines suddenly retracted, Tang Yu's expression changed drastically. Void spell. A circle of tadpole-like runes emerged, and Han Fei found that Tang Yu's figure was disappearing. In the blink of an eye, the void lines were already the fastest, but they had only managed to hook 2 of the void lines. However, Tang Yu actually shattered 2 pieces of her soul in that instant. The next second, her figure disappeared from this space. Han Fei naturally saw that Tang Yu had drilled into the void. When she reappeared, Tang Yu was already tens of thousands of meters high in the sky, dripping with blood. Many parts of her body were cut and her bones were exposed. Han Fei looked up. It seemed that she had given up the trial. Smart woman. Tang Yu knew that if she escaped into the void, even if she could survive, her strength would definitely be greatly reduced. Facing the void turbulence here, it would be good enough if she could survive. If she didn't take this opportunity to fly to the sky and leave the trial, she would probably be easily caught by Han Fei. Han Fei's blood was surging, and he seemed to be very angry. One time, Yang Ruoyun's sneak attacked him and robbed him, and the other time, Tang Yu escaped from his hands. Suddenly, Han Fei looked up. Blood Sea Divine Wood City, I'll remember it. At the moment when Tang Yu escaped, Han Fei didn't care. Originally, he just wanted to grab Tang Yu's Sun Moon shell. However, this woman ran so fast that she didn't even hesitate to destroy a piece of her soul, so that Han Fei couldn't even steal a bite of her soul. However, Han Fei didn't panic. Since he had become himself again, there were many methods at his disposal. Fuse. Han Fei finally had no scruples. Without perceiving, he immediately smelled the aura of two blood demons, a half-mermaid and a Zerg. If he wasn't mistaken, they were people who had witnessed the celestial phenomenon from before and were drawn here. Without hesitation, Han Fei chose the people from the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. In the eyes of outsiders, Han Fei failed twice because of the people from the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. At this moment, Yun Chu saw Han Fei's movement and his face suddenly turned cold. Yang Ruoyun's sneak attack and Tang Yu's escape didn't mean that Han Fei was not strong. If Han Fei was not strong, how did the Fish Dragon King die? If Han Fei was not strong, how could Tang Yu escape in such a short time? Escape at the risk of being smashed? As early as when Han Fei killed the Fish Dragon King, Chang Shuai-Qin and Yun Chu felt that it was a wrong decision to let Han Fei participate in this trial. If the Blood Sea Divine Wood City had a heavenly talent list, Yang Qing's ranking should be in the top 20. She was extremely proficient in incantations. Especially in attack and defense, she could use both incantations at the same time. It could be said that she was extremely stable. At this moment, Yang Qing looked at the scorched earth. She didn't know what happened here. Could it be that the opportunity has already been taken by someone else? Swish. All of a sudden, an extremely cold saber light appeared in the air. Gate. Swish. Swish. At that moment, Yang Qing didn't choose to escape. The horrible knife light was too terrifying. Her first thought was to shake her arm and reveal the silver bracelet on her wrist. 9 yellow rings in a row directly fell from the top of her head. Clink, crack, crack, crack. To Yang Qing's horror, her gate seal incantation had been cut down 5 times in an instant. Swish. Like a phantom, Han Fei appeared out of thin air, and spiritual energy rolled out from his shoulder and directly hit her. Bam! Yang Qing was sent flying, and the 2 gate seal incantations cracked open. And in Han Fei's hand, there was already a big frost sword in it. Draw the sword! It was too fast. Under such circumstances, Yang Qing could only make 2 reactions. One was to use the necklace on her neck to block in front of her. At the same time, she grabbed the golden hairpin on her head and stabbed it at Han Fei, as if she was trying to force Han Fei back. As far as Yang Qing knew, as long as she could force Han Fei back, she could use her incantations to escape. However, at this moment, Yang Qing saw the corner of Han Fei's mouth slightly curl. Clink! A giant shadow of a Vajra stood proudly in front of her, and the violent attack formed by her spell was grasped by the Vajra's hands and dispersed from the side. None of the spells could break the Vajra shadow. At that moment, Yang Qing had no way to escape. Han Fei raised his sword and attacked from the bottom up. Crack, crack, crack. Han Fei didn't hide his power at all, and Yang Qing was only at the peak level of Dao Seeking. How could she block Han Fei's attack? With a poochie sound, Yang Qing was split into 2 halves. The entire battle lasted for less than a second. In the outside world, the Worm King curled his lips and thought to himself, Han Fei, it's over. Chapter 1332. The Blood Demons were all Millennium Snappers. At this moment, Han Fei hooked Yang Qing with the void lines and sucked her soul. In the end, there was not even 100 points, only a few dozen points. Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. Sure enough, he had to find a strong opponent. Yang Qing was slaughtered in an instant, which shocked Yun Chu and Cheng Shuiken. It was too fast. Han Fei didn't even give Yang Qing a chance to react. In an instant, the battle was over. It seemed to be stronger than when it fought against the Ichthyosaur King previously. It also showed that the Fish Dragon King wouldn't be any better than Yang Qing if it didn't have the close distance technique. Just like Tang Yu could only escape after being crushed by Han Fei. 30 seconds later, after Han Fei killed another half-mermaid, he didn't immediately go to the people of the Baibei royal city. Just now, the figure in the tomb said that there was some dragon energy on this island that he could benefit from. Han Fei didn't know what level that person was at. However, he had never heard of a dragon. So far, he had only seen the soul of an azure dragon once. However, that person undoubtedly gave Han Fei a message. On this island, not only him, but also the dead azure dragon. Otherwise, if that thing was alive, he wouldn't be able to get it with his small arms and legs. That person wouldn't let him get it. Therefore, that person must have told him this information only because he was a human being. This was his unique opportunity, and others didn't have this kind of treatment. Han Fei stood outside the wasteland, closed his eyes, and sensed carefully. For a moment, he found that there were as many as 5 people nearby. Among them, there were at least 2 blood demons. But in addition to these people, Han Fei also perceived as many as 7 or 8 special places on this island. For example, there seemed to be a huge amount of energy on his left side. For example, right in front of him, there seemed to be abundant spiritual energy. However, there seemed to be a kind of sweetness, like in the direction of the spiritual orchard, there seemed to be a special spiritual fruit. Another example, Han Fei felt that there was great danger in front of him. Besides, the water vapor there was thick, which was naturally the big river on this island. And so on. Han Fei felt that there were countless treasures on this island. If he could obtain all of them, he would definitely be able to make a fortune. If he were to explore the island alone, Han Fei felt that he would definitely explore them one by one. However, the current conditions did not allow it. He had already returned, and his performance was quite strong. He might not leave the stage early. However, if she kept slaughtering others, the Life Queen might be threatened by the other 2 kings. Moreover, 2 days had already passed since the trial. Treasure hunting required time. There was no such thing as leaving a treasure on the ground and waiting for someone to pick it up. Therefore, an idea popped up in Han Fei's mind. Find the Dragon Chi first. If there was enough time, he would let the others dig for fortuitous encounters first. He would wait for them to dig up the fortuitous opportunity before he went hunting. How convenient would that be? However, Han Fei had only felt the dragon might, but he didn't know what the dragon essence chi was. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Old Yuan, do you know what dragon origin chi is?" The old turtle replied, "I don't know. I have never had any dealings with the dragon race. During my era, the dragon clan did not participate in the Great Era." Han Fei took a look. Even the old turtle didn't know about the dragon clan, so how could the Life Queen know? The Life Queen should have become a king after the Age of Doom. She probably didn't know about the things that happened even before that. At this moment, the Life Queen was in contact with Bai Suzhen's family in the sea-quelling painting. Han Fei asked. Sure enough, the Life Queen didn't know anything about this. She had never seen the so-called Dragon Clan. Han Fei wanted to find out where the dragon might was on this island. He couldn't feel this kind of power at all. His mind was blank and he couldn't find it at all. After a while, Han Fei chose 3 places. One of them was the enormous river. The length of the river occupied 1/3 of the island, about 6,000 kilometers long, and its width varied from hundreds to thousands of kilometers. Such a huge area could be said to be the most dangerous place on this island, where danger could be hidden everywhere. The dragon essence was probably somewhere in that place. Because it was dangerous, it was difficult for ordinary people to find it. The other was a place filled with a deathly aura. It gave people an extremely gloomy feeling, and there should be undead creatures living there. Han Fei could directly feel it through Little White. Just like this grassland, the barren graves were hidden, and there were mysteries inside. The last one was actually just a thought from Han Fei. Because of the fusion of Little Black and Little White, Han Fei vaguely felt that in the east, there seemed to be some power attracting him, but he wasn't sure what it was. 2 hours later, Han Fei stood by the river. He had already cancelled the fusion and let Little White appear. Little White said, "Dad, it's so dangerous here." Han Fei smiled and said, "Daughter, can you feel that there is a particularly high-level power here?" Little White said, "I don't think so." The old turtle said, "It shouldn't be here. Think about it. This big river is like a sea, and there must be thousands of creatures living in it. If the dragon essence was here, it would have been absorbed by other creatures after the baptism of the endless water and moon." Han Fei's heart did a flip. "You mean it's a place where no one goes?" The old turtle said, "If it were me, I would at least not allow any creature to see my burial place." Han Fei thought, "That's right." So, he directly abandoned the river and spent a full 5 hours crossing the swamp and coming to a canyon full of dead air. Outside, the Insect King was a little confused. What is Han Fei looking for? From the grassland from before until now, Han Fei did nothing except killing 2 heavenly talents from the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If the White Armor Emperor hadn't been seriously injured, and if the one from the Blood Sea Divine Wood City hadn't never gone out, the Life Queen probably wouldn't have let Han Fei enter this time. In addition to saving Han Fei from the White Shell Royal City, everyone certainly hoped that Han Fei could defeat the heavenly talents of the 2 royal cities. As long as these people didn't die, they would basically become venerables in the future. At the very least, they would be half-venerables. If a group of them were killed at this time, it could be said that the real heavenly talents of this generation in the 2 royal cities were killed. There would be a gap in the supply of strong masters. However, Han Fei didn't care about those people at all. He seemed to be looking for something. When he arrived at the riverside, he didn't even bother to explore. He immediately left and went to the canyon that was filled with undead creatures. The Insect King felt that Han Fei must have discovered some secret. As a result, he had lost interest in killing the heavenly talents of the 2 royal cities. And this time, he was looking for that secret. Since the Insect King could see it, so could the others. Chang Shuai-Qin frowned and looked calmly in the direction where Zhang Xiaotian was. It was a mountain range in the east, where exotic beasts ran rampant. Zhang Xiaotian fought all the way and had killed more than 100 enemies. As early as when they explored this island, the first exploration was Chang Shuai-Qin's responsibility. At that time, there were several hidden forces that quickly disappeared. One of them seemed to be glowing, which seemed to be the symbol of a heaven and earth spiritual treasure. However, that spiritual treasure seemed to have intelligence and knew that a strong master was coming, so it immediately disappeared. No matter how Chang Shuai-Qin searched, he couldn't find anything. Therefore, Chang Shuai-Qin secretly gave this opportunity to Zhang Xiaotian. At that time, he thought about the Fish Dragon King, but compared to Zhang Xiaotian, the Fish Dragon King wasn't steady enough. Its talent was a little bit worse, and its temper was even worse. In general, the Fish Dragon King was much worse than Zhang Xiaotian, who was steady and tough. Therefore, Chang Shuai-Qin naturally put his bet on Zhang Xiaotian. At this moment, Han Fei's search made Chang Shuai-Qin feel a little uncomfortable. The resources on this island were already rich enough. However, Han Fei didn't even look at it. What was he looking for? The Death Canyon. Han Fei had a bad feeling as soon as he arrived here. Because there were corpses everywhere and dry bones were everywhere. In the canyon, the wind seemed to be howling. The blue and red flames that flickered in the air were much more terrifying than the so-called will-o'-the-wisp. At this moment, Han Fei felt the ground shaking as soon as he landed. Those corpses were piecing together. This scene reminded Han Fei of the boneyard. However, different from the boneyard, Han Fei saw that there were corpses with crystal bones standing up. Swish! A white light flashed in front of him, and Han Fei punched out with a golden light in his hand. With a loud bang, a skeleton was blown away by Han Fei. However, the crystal white bones didn't break at all. Han Fei asked, "What kind of bones are these? Why are they so hard?" The old turtle nodded. "This means that he was very strong before he died." Han Fei pointed at the dense thousands of corpses in front of him and said helplessly, "You mean these corpses were very strong when they were alive?" The old turtle nodded. "Yes." Han Fei scoffed. "This is a headache. I can only fight my way through." "Oh!" Bam! 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 Han Fei roared and rushed out. However, in the depths of the canyon, there was a long-haired woman with smooth skin, holding a small round instrument in her hand, looking in Han Fei's direction. The woman's eyes were hollow, and she seemed a little unhappy to see Han Fei rushing all the way with the King Kong phantom like a barbarian. She slightly wrinkled her nose. She flicked her fingers, and 4 skeletons with a faint golden light slowly climbed up from a pile of abandoned bones and wobbled towards Han Fei. After doing this, the woman glanced at the sky with her hollow eyes and slowly said, "The death-forbidden zone. No living beings can enter." Chapter 1333. This canyon had been discovered a long time ago. But why did this long-haired woman still show up? The main reason was that there was an abyss cave in this death canyon. Even the venerables couldn't see through it. The White Armor Emperor once said that this place might lead to the Wall of Death. With that said, naturally no one wanted to go. Therefore, if someone chose this death canyon, Chang Shui-Qin and the others would definitely say something. If they had no choice, when they really came to this place, they would also feel that this place was extremely difficult and retreat. However, was Han Fei the kind of person who would retreat? In terms of physique alone, Han Fei was already among the top few in the Waterwood Heaven and the Yin-Yang Heaven. In these 2 waters, Han Fei could basically break through most of the dangerous forbidden areas. Of course, there were very few places that were particularly dangerous, but Han Fei was not stupid and wouldn't rashly go there. At this moment, Han Fei's fists were like stars, bursting with dazzling golden light in the canyon. The invincible fist mark completely ignored these fast and terrifying skeletons. Although there were big skeletal hands reaching out from time to time under his feet, like life-taking palms stretching out from hell, there were 2 arrays rising on Han Fei's body all the time. The soul-driving array and the coiled turtle array never stopped. In addition, the infinity water was like flying locusts. Therefore, there was not a single skeleton that could really shake Han Fei. Just when Han Fei felt that he could quickly rush to the depths of this canyon, he heard a clanging sound. This sound was slightly different from the previous collisions. It was more crisp, as if the infinity water had met a well-matched opponent. In this sea of white bones, Han Fei quickly found a few extraordinary skeletons. When Han Fei saw these skeletons, he was shocked. 4 pale golden skeletons. What do they mean? Before Han Fei asked, he heard the old turtle say, half-golden bodies. These 4 people were 4 venerables when they were alive. They have condensed half-golden bodies. Even after such a long time, their golden bodies still have luster, which means that they were at least high-level venerables when they were alive. Wow! Han Fei couldn't help but say, really? The Wall of Death is already so terrifying. There are so many withered venerables on this island? Are there kings hiding among them? The old turtle said, "There might not be kings hiding here, but there are definitely venerable ones. These 4 skeletons are not the key. I have a feeling that there are other creatures watching this place." Han Fei's heart did a flip. Not only did the old turtle have this feeling, but he also had this feeling. From the moment he stepped into the Death Canyon, he felt goosebumps all over his body, as if he was being watched. Han Fei suddenly thought of the dragon's soul he had seen in the Ideal Palace. He couldn't help but say, could it be that there is still a trace of the dragon soul left in that so-called dragon origin chi? The old turtle said, I have never seen a dragon, so I don't know. However, the thing that was spying on us should be in the depths of the canyon. It was just that, there seemed to be a seal blocking his perception. If we defeat these 4, we should be able to see it. Han Fei rolled his eyes. As you said, these are 4 venerables. The old tortoise said, after so many years, my golden body has degenerated. You're also a half-step golden body. What's there to be afraid of? Roar! Under the impact of the infinity water, 4 bright golden skeletons charged at him at an even faster speed. Swoosh! Holding Snowmorn, Han Fei smashed it down, trying to kill one of them first. However, one of the skeletons clenched its fists and stomped on the ground, pushing it out. Clang! A terrifying sword intent swept across 1,000 meters. Hundreds of holes appeared on the ground from the impact of the sword intent that spread out from this strike. In fact, there were even a few skeletons nearby that had been crushed. Of course, the 4 golden skeletons were fine. Seeing this scene, Han Fei was greatly shocked. Was this the power of a golden body? His full-strength attack was blocked by a golden body after one attack? The old turtle said, just look at your own physique and you'll know. Your bones aren't any weaker than yours. Do you think you can kill yourself with one attack? Han Fei said, I'm stronger than them. My body is still intact, but it's not just a golden body. My body is indestructible too. Bam! 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 Han Fei recalled Snowmorn and crashed into the 4 golden body holes in the blink of an eye. At that moment, Han Fei's body flickered. With the heavenly illusionary divine technique, he could fight 4 at once. With the devil change, Han Fei's strength was doubled, and his combat ability was higher than that of the golden bodies. Bam! Bam! Boom! Boom! Every punch hit flesh. In only a few seconds, thousands of fist marks had been punched out. Han Fei punched with both fists ferociously, and the 4 golden bodies were all blown back. Bam! Han Fei punched the head of one of the skeletons again, sending it flying for almost 100 meters. He left a huge pit in the pile of skeletons. At the same time, several fist marks hit Han Fei. Even though Han Fei had learned melee combat from Ren Tianfei and had the 108 desolate god body, he had to bear the bombardment of the terrifying power even though he was not a human being. However, compared with all kinds of strange combat skills, Han Fei preferred the thrill of punching the flesh. However, he saw him clench a fist and kick out, sending him flying. One of them punched Han Fei in the chest, and Han Fei bumped it with his head. With a dang sound, the skeleton was still sent flying. In the outside world, apart from the Insect King, Yunchu and Changshuiken had never relaxed their brows as they watched the Venerable One. What kind of freakish physique is Han Fei's physique? Those who had become venerable all knew that the difference between a venerable and a venerable was huge. Both the body and the soul would be several times stronger than those in the Tao-seeking state. Even those in the Tao-seeking state who didn't cultivate their physique would become stronger. Once they became venerables, their spiritual energy or demonic energy would be completely liquefied, and their physique would be greatly improved. Some top heavenly talents would even absorb the chaotic energy and begin to transform when they became venerables. At that time, their physique and comprehensive strength would only be stronger, and they would begin to develop toward the golden body realm. Therefore, when they saw the 4 golden bodies, they couldn't help but be shocked. Being able to cultivate a golden body, they must have been top-level masters. Those venerables hiding in the void were even more speechless. They wondered, what kind of physique refining technique did Han Fei cultivate? He can actually fight the 4 golden skeletons at close range without retreating at all? Death Canyon. Ho! After fighting for a while, Han Fei discovered the problem. The frequency of these golden bodies' battles was limited. They also needed a huge amount of energy to support them. Otherwise, how could they exert that kind of terrifying attack? Since it was energy, Han Fei opened his mouth like a vortex, and a huge amount of energy gathered in Han Fei's body. Without the support of a huge amount of energy, these golden skeletons were no different from a few iron shelves. Bam! Han Fei punched the sacrificing punch and blew up a golden skeleton. Of course, those bones weren't broken, they were just scattered. Bam! 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 In just half an hour, the 4 golden skeletons were shattered by Han Fei one after another. At that moment, Han Fei found that there were no longer skeletons bombarding him around. In the canyon, skeletons stood there with blue soul fire flapping in their eyes. They seemed to be staring at him, but none of them continued to attack. Perhaps they knew that the tactic of overwhelming Han Fei with numbers wouldn't work. However, the skeletons still made Han Fei's blood freeze. Deep in the canyon, Han Fei didn't retreat and went all the way to the so-called seal. Deep in the canyon, it was like a black translucent energy shield. However, when Han Fei approached, he saw a pale-faced woman standing on the inner wall of the translucent black seal. The woman was holding a fist-sized multi-hole device in one hand, and her other hand was pressing on a stone tablet. On the stone tablet, the words "Death Valley" were engraved. When he saw the woman, the corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched slightly. This woman seemed to have flesh and blood on her body. However, he could see the bones inside her through the so-called flesh and blood. In other words, this woman looked like a skeleton with a translucent human skin draped over her. From afar, Han Fei was a little scared. When the words "Death Valley" were placed in front of him, it was as if the words "Gates of Hell" were placed in front of him. It was creepy. Han Fei frowned and thought, what should I do? All I met before were skeletons. Now, is this a human or a skeleton? She didn't speak, but it didn't seem simple. The woman said, "The Death Valley is forbidden to the living. If you want to go to the Death Valley, you should abandon your mortal body and become an undead creature. Are you willing?" Hearing this, Han Fei shook his head. "I want to live." The woman looked at Han Fei. "Then let's go back." Han Fei thought to himself, should I fight or not? Han Fei asked, "Miss, may I ask if you know the dragons?" The woman was indifferent to Han Fei's words. "I don't know." Han Fei was puzzled. Is it not here? Or is this woman deceiving me? Logically speaking, the dragon origin chi should be in the place where the azure dragon died if it wasn't in a place with abundant creatures. According to Little White's perception, this place was the heaviest and evilest place on this island. Han Fei could even see that behind the woman, there was a big hole in the translucent barrier. There must be something extraordinary about it. The old turtle said, "This woman doesn't seem to be weak. I feel that she should be a venerable. However, it seems that she can't leave that seal." Damn it! Han Fei was stunned. Wouldn't she be able to kill him with a slap? However, this woman didn't seem to have any killing intent. Han Fei pondered for a long time. He couldn't go back without knowing anything, could he? What if the dragon origin chi was here? Han Fei asked, "Are you sure she can't leave that seal?" The old turtle said, "If she could, would you still dare to stand here?" After a long silence, Han Fei suddenly raised his head and said, "Miss, I'm here for an opportunity. Please give me some. Otherwise, I'll be very embarrassed." The woman slightly tilted her head. "What if I don't?" Han Fei's lips twitched. "I'll smash your valley and sweep away the bones outside your seal." Blue light glowed in the woman's eyes, but Han Fei didn't step back. In the end, the woman seemed to think of something and casually threw out the strange porous object in her hand. The woman said, "It can ensure that you won't be harmed by the undead creatures. If you don't retreat, let's fight." Chapter 1334. Han Fei didn't expect that the woman would simply throw out the thing in her hand. Originally, Han Fei just wanted to trick the other party. What if the dragon origin chi was behind her? What if she was the creature guarding the dragon origin chi? In that case, this woman definitely wouldn't agree to his request. Han Fei felt that there shouldn't be any treasures on this ground except for the big pit in this seal. When he took the small ball and looked at it, information appeared in Han Fei's eyes. Name Death Bone Sun Introduction. It's made of a king's bone, Death Soul Flame, Inchi, Golden Bone Powder. Immortal Essence Demon. It has the magical power to control some undead creatures. The wearer will be surrounded by death energy and can merge with undead creatures. Playing the Bone Sun can control some undead creatures, which must be judged by the strength of the wearer. Quality Ultra Quality Divine Weapon, Attached Soul None Effect, can control undead creatures, recastable, unrefined, remarks can't control undead creatures of the same realm or stronger than the wearer. Han Fei was shocked when he saw this thing. This thing turned out to be made of a king's bone. But how could a king's bone only reach the level of an ultra-quality divine weapon? Look at her sky-dissecting finger, which can kill a venerable with one finger. This Bone Sun doesn't seem to be able to kill a venerable. However, it doesn't seem to be bad. Although he didn't seem to have encountered many undead creatures so far. However, undead creatures definitely occupied an important position in this world. Even the patriarch of the Thug clan had turned into an undead creature, which was evident. Holding this Bone Sun, Han Fei actually didn't feel satisfied. He felt that if the other party could casually throw out such an ultra-quality divine weapon to block his footsteps, then wouldn't the thing behind her be even more important? Even the old turtle said, "There must be a big secret here. I feel that there's something strange in the seal. However, why didn't the three kings search it by force? That's a bit strange." Han Fei said, "On this island everything is extraordinary. God knows what the kings are afraid of? I'll ask my junior sister later. However, I've given this girl her treasure, but I don't want to leave. Shall we find a way to get in?" Buzz! Suddenly, Han Fei and the woman looked up at Dongfang Tianyu. The tribulation clouds were thick and heavy. Someone was actually going to undergo tribulation here? Han Fei frowned. There seems to be a little dragon might in that place? At this time, Han Fei finally felt it. Fuse! When the yin-yang divine eyes appeared, Han Fei immediately sensed that dragon might appeared in the east. Han Fei was greatly shocked. The dragon essence chi was really not here? Han Fei quickly looked back. F***ck. Han Fei was shocked to see that. It turned out that under his yin-yang divine eye, the woman had completely turned into a skeleton. However, there were countless soul shadows inside the skeleton. Han Fei immediately felt awful, as if this woman had swallowed countless souls. It looked too evil. The woman turned around and looked at Han Fei. "Let's go." Han Fei smiled awkwardly. "I'm leaving. Bye, miss." Han Fei didn't want to have a conflict with such a weird guy. Seeing that the woman was so reluctant, he didn't know why this island appeared. His current strength was still weak, so it was better not to deal with undead creatures that he didn't know if they could be considered as living beings. Swish! 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 Han Fei quickly left the Death Canyon, turned around, and flew directly east across the sky. Originally, the trial takers on the entire island were consciously gathering to the grassland in the west, causing the overall trend to be to the west. But as soon as the grassland and the barren grave disappeared, the trial takers dispersed again. Previously, because of the abnormal weather, almost half of the trial takers were attracted. Now, the tribulation clouds were thick and spread for thousands of kilometers. Within 10,000 miles, there was a wah-la sound, and a torrential downpour actually began. With such a loud thunder, how could the people on the island not sense it? For a moment, at least 20 people immediately stopped, turned around, and immediately flew in the direction of the heavenly tribulation. They were all top heavenly talent. Everyone here had reached the time to undergo tribulation. However, some people wanted to wait and improve a little. The stronger they were now, the stronger the Tao-seeking state would be. Some people wanted to increase the probability of passing the tribulation. They felt that the tribulation was dangerous and had to be foolproof. However, everyone who had passed the tribulation knew one thing, which was, Don't pass the tribulation in the midst of a pack of wolves, because if someone passed the tribulation by force, it would inevitably cause the heavenly tribulation to be unstable. At that time, the danger would inevitably increase by 30%. At this moment, someone chose to pass the tribulation during the trial. In other people's minds, that person must have thought that he could pass the tribulation without any mistake. Just the existence of such a treasure land was enough to attract people's attention. Then they thought, why is that person passing the tribulation? Then they realized that this person must have encountered something that he had to pass the tribulation for. On this island, the thing that he had to do with the strength of the Tao-seeking state was definitely a great opportunity. Even Han Fei had the same thought in his mind. Besides, he was even more certain that this great opportunity must have something to do with the dragon origin Qi. Han Fei secretly cursed F*ck, so it's in the east. The old turtle said, the strength of this person is not weak. The range of the tribulation cloud is so large, and his talent is actually comparable to yours. Han Fei frowned and said, I know who it is. It's probably not from the Shuemu heaven. The strongest person this time is Han Fei, the insect man. Secondly, the only one in the Baibei royal city who can do this is Zhang Xiaotian. Tang Yu from the Blood Sea Divine Wood shouldn't be qualified either. Besides, she has already run away and left the trial. There must not be many people like Tang Yu, and even if there are, there will at most be one more. Han Fei narrowed his eyes slightly. So, the most likely person is Zhang Xiaotian, and at most an unknown person from the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. It must be one of them. Swish. Han Fei swept across the void, and a series of void cracks appeared in the sky. There were 3 cracks almost every kilometer, and at the peak, there were even as many as 7 or 8. With such a high frequency of void cracks, even Han Fei had to dodge. However, once he dodged, it would inevitably take him several times longer. Han Fei roared, and a glaring King Kong appeared. The invincible will condensed into a halo and floated on the surface of his body. Under his feet, the coiled turtle array appeared one after another. Swish. Others wouldn't be so crazy. Some venerables thought that Han Fei was crazy. He was accelerating crazily regardless of the consequences. After Han Fei used the Heaven Void Divine Movement art, his speed had already reached an extremely terrifying level. Coupled with the Devil Change, his speed had already surpassed that of everyone who came to the trial this time. And Han Fei didn't even use the Beast King art. It wasn't that he couldn't use it, but that he didn't dare to use it. His speed was already very fast. In a second, hundreds of spatial cracks swept at him, and this was when he tried his best to dodge. However, this was much better than when he came out of the demon suppressing tower. At that time, there were really dense spatial cracks. Even though he had a strong physique, he was still screaming under the slashes. But even so, Han Fei crossed the void at an incredible speed, which shocked many venerables. In the void outside, someone was surprised. What kind of freakish physique is this kid? Even the 4 golden skeletons can't beat him. Or is it because Han Fei has the advantage of his physique and secret method, so he's not afraid? Even Han Fei couldn't break his golden skeleton. However, it's a bit too much to be able to fly at such a speed on this island. Immediately, Chang Shui-Qin shouted in a low voice, "Isn't your Shuemu heaven going too far? Han Fei's physique has at least reached the peak level of Tao seeking. Isn't it unfair to let such a person enter the trial?" In the Blood Sea Divine Wood City, Han Fei killed 2 heavenly talents. Tang Yu was also kicked out of the trial, and was almost killed by Han Fei. Yun Chu naturally also shouted, "Yes, Han Fei's strength has exceeded the level of this trial. He should withdraw from this trial." Humph! The Insect King snorted coldly. "Do you think we're joking when we withdrew the 10 spots? Han Fei is just fast. If his strength is really at the peak level of Tao seeking, can the people of the Cloud Sea Divine Wood City take the Fish Dragon King's life? If he is really that strong, can Tang Yu escape? Chang Shui-Qin said, Han Fei's physique is already invincible. This has nothing to do with his strength. Because in this trial, there was simply no one who could kill him. Insect King, do you think this is fair? The Insect King's voice was heavy. Our Shuemu heaven has lost 10 people. Why is it unfair to send a heavenly talent with an extremely strong physique? No matter how strong Han Fei is, can he defeat all the enemies at once? It's a question whether he can find a heavenly talent or not. Could it be that just because one's physique is strong, one can't compete for opportunities? The three sides had been arguing for a long time. However, the Insect King didn't make a sound, so this argument was meaningless. On the island, the scope of the heavenly tribulation had been greatly reduced. When Han Fei was halfway there, the first bolt of lightning had already fallen, and the distance between the two was about 5,000 kilometers. Han Fei's face turned cold, and he suddenly gritted his teeth and shouted, "Agility of wind! Whoop!" The phantom glass wings spread out. Although the phantom glass wings were still very useful now, they didn't have that much significance anymore. If Han Fei hadn't obtained the Wind God Pearl, it wouldn't have made a difference whether he had wings or not. But the phantom glass wings had two special abilities: unlimited flashing and double speed enhancement. Swish! Han Fei's speed increased several times again. He was no longer flying. In the eyes of others, he was simply courting death. Even though Han Fei's figure had already flashed, he was still dripping with blood. This time, he was really cut all over, but the golden blood was hidden by him. Boom! Although Han Fei sprinted desperately, he was still a step too late. Only less than 300 kilometers away, the third bolt of lightning fell. However, just when everyone thought that the tribulation cloud was about to pass, a dragon seemed to turn over in the sky, and the purple lightning reappeared. Han Fei was shocked. Zhang Xiaotian? The 4-9 Kings Tribulation? Chapter 1335. Not only was Han Fei dumbfounded, but all the other forces were dumbfounded. A few days ago, Han Fei had just passed the 4-9 Kings Tribulation. Now, he was here again. Could it be that all the heavenly talents from the ancient times had started to gather together in just 1 year? Maybe not, but the strength of this generation of heavenly talents was obvious to all. First, Han Fei, needless to say, had already passed the heavenly tribulation. Then there was the Fish Dragon King. Although he didn't pass the 4-9 Kings Tribulation, he broke into the forbidden trial field of the White Shell Royal City and survived in the Thunder Prison. He had been listed as a core member. Unfortunately, he didn't grow up and died on this island. Now, another heavenly talent appeared in the White Shell Royal City, and Zhang Xiaotian was going to pass the 4-9 Kings Tribulation. Even Han Fei didn't expect this. How could this guy be so strong? Seeing that the tribulation clouds in the sky had turned purple-red, Han Fei was alarmed. Old Yuan, with my current strength, it shouldn't be a problem for me to pass the 4-9 Kings Tribulation, right? The old turtle said, "You're much weaker and your soul power has been cut in half. Even if you can resist it, you'll definitely be heavily injured. However, if you can really snatch this tribulation, your golden body will probably be able to go further." At that moment there was no time to think at all. Should he snatch the 4-9 Kings Tribulation or not? If it were an ordinary person, they wouldn't even dare to approach such a terrifying heavenly tribulation, let alone snatch it. A distance of 300 kilometers was already within the range of the 4-9 Kings Tribulation. Han Fei only hesitated for a moment before he rushed in. However, the moment he rushed in, Han Fei stomped on the ground, and the illusion of mountains and rivers appeared. He stuffed about 10% of the resources in Forge the Universe into the Sun-Moon shell and threw them into the sea-quelling painting. Han Fei didn't intend to take back the remaining resources. Previously, he had so many resources on him, but after going through the 4-9 Monarchs Tribulation, he had expended them all, leaving nothing behind. This time, although he was no longer himself, the intensity of the heavenly tribulation would also be redefined according to the people in the range of the heavenly tribulation. There was no doubt that Han Fei, an uninvited guest, would inevitably attract most of the power of the heavenly tribulation. Therefore, at this moment, the purple heavenly tribulation paused, and the black clouds suddenly became heavier. The power around the island instantly poured into this place. Boom, boom, boom. For Zhang Xiaotian, the 4-9 monarch tribulations would come one after another. However, facing Han Fei, 3 bolts of purple lightning struck down in an instant. Of course, the power of this purple thunderbolt was not as terrifying as the true 4th thunderbolt. However, the 3 bolts of lightning were actually just to stop Han Fei so that the heavenly tribulation could quickly absorb the energy between heaven and earth and gather stronger power. Beast King Art! Roar! Han Fei roared, put on a battle suit, stepped on the great plate turtle array, and held the embroidery needle in his hand. Boom, boom, boom! Han Fei's posture was naturally handsome. However, in an instant, his skin and flesh were split open, and his body was covered in cracks. 3 bolts of lightning blasted Han Fei into the ground, and the embroidery needle was sent flying more than 100 kilometers away. His middle-grade divine armor melted into molten iron. What formation! What invincible will! What glaring Vajra! All of them disappeared without a trace. However, these efforts were not in vain. Purple electric arcs flashed on the surface of Han Fei's body. Han Fei's chest was heaving up and down as he absorbed the terrifying power of the heavenly tribulation. Han Fei's body expanded to several times its original size. Han Fei's bones, flesh, and blood felt numb. His meridians were able to withstand the flow of the power of the heavenly tribulation. The power quickly gathered in his meridians and then dissipated in his flesh and bones. Get lost! When Han Fei forcibly withstood the 3 bolts of purple lightning, Zhang Xiaotian was furious. During the 4-9 monarch tribulations, countless people had helped him transcend the heavenly tribulation. He had also crazily polished his foundation and almost suppressed his power to the limit. This time, he had a great opportunity. He had just absorbed 30% of it and used it to break through the barrier and transcend the 4-9 monarch tribulations. However, when the 4th bolt of lightning came, Han Fei came. In an instant, he snatched away most of the power of the heavenly tribulation. Although Han Fei snatched away the heavenly tribulation, he was actually helping him transcend the heavenly tribulation. If he couldn't transcend the heavenly tribulation, Zhang Xiaotian would definitely be killed. However, would someone like Zhang Xiaotian be afraid? This was his fortuitous encounter, okay? The heavenly tribulation didn't care who transcended the heavenly tribulation. As long as one transcended the heavenly tribulation, the power of heaven and earth would be injected into his body, and his body would undergo earth-shattering changes. However, the last purple lightning of the 4-9 monarch tribulations was the essence of the heavenly tribulation. How could Zhang Xiaotian tolerate it when Han Fei devoured half of it in one go? Zhang Xiaotian's eyes turned red. In the void, 9 spears pierced through the void. After all, it wasn't an internal battle. The 2 of them were on opposing sides, so Zhang Xiaotian naturally wouldn't hold back. Therefore, he used all 9 blood-colored spears at once. The 9 spears locked onto Han Fei. While Han Fei was resisting the heavenly tribulation, he planned to kill him once and for all. In Han Fei's heart, the old turtle said, "No, there's something wrong with this person. Although I admit that this kid is talented, he shouldn't be able to resist the 4-9 monarch tribulations. In this barren land, it's not that no one can resist the 4-9 monarch tribulations. However, their resources were limited, and their defensive methods were limited. They were only able to withstand the 4-9 heavenly tribulations. If there aren't enough resources, even you can't do it, how can he do it?" Han Fei felt that he was at the peak of his combat power. At this moment, he roared and punched out the sacrificing punch. The embroidery needles in his hands had been replaced by 2 sledgehammers. Bam! 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 Like a star exploding, the first 4 of the 9 blood-colored spears shattered, unable to resist the sacrificing punch at all. Boom! However, at the 5th spear, it was annihilated at the same time as the sacrificing punch. The 6th spear, along with the aftermath of the battle, arrived in an instant. However, Han Fei had already swung his hammer 5 or 6 times, and a giant hammer smashed down. Bam! The intermediate divine quality sledgehammer in Han Fei's hand exploded in an instant. The 6th blood-colored spear was also smashed. Facing the spinning 7th spear, an array condensed on the other sledgehammer in Han Fei's hand. The coiled turtle array appeared on the surface of Han Fei's body. Bam! The 7th spear shattered. Clank, clank, clank. The 8th spear was about to stab Han Fei's chest. The infinity water crazily blocked in front of Han Fei like a spiral cone. Han Fei held the embroidery needle in his hand and used the rod as a knife. Clang! Crack! The 8th blood-colored spear still failed. At this moment, all the people watching the battle were shocked. Is he still King Human? He had just been struck by lightning. Now, he burst out such a terrifying power. Zhang Xiaotian was the same. These 9 blood-colored spears were not something that any creature below the advanced Tao-seeking state could resist at all. It was really because it was too strong and too piercing. In this way, the 9th blood-colored spear was like a strike when multiple spears were combined into one. Han Fei's eyes flashed, and he shouted in a low voice, "9th Heaven Lightning." In Han Fei's mind, the Tao seed was activated, imagining himself holding a lightning spear and striking with all his strength. In the next moment, a bolt of purple lightning struck down at the same time. Han Fei stretched out his hand and grabbed, and a purple lightning spear was held in his hand. The spear shot out and hit the 9th blood-colored spear horizontally. With a swish, the space collapsed, filling the space within 300 kilometers. Zhang Xiaotian was shocked. How is it possible? How can you borrow the power of lightning? In the outside world, even the white-armored emperor was shocked. What kind of method is this? Using the King Tribulation as a weapon? Mu Wuhua, is this Han Fei the reincarnation of that ancient master from your Waterwood heaven? The Life Queen snorted coldly. Is it so hard to admit that Han Fei was stronger than you? Humph, what a joke. You think he's stronger than me? The 4-9 King Tribulations couldn't shake me at all. That being said, the white-armored emperor frowned slightly. This Han Fei's strength seemed to be beyond everyone's imagination. Zhang Xiaotian's King Tribulation was probably not perfect. Rumble. Han Fei just held the thunder spear in his hand and struck out. However, as soon as it struck, an extremely thick lightning bolt fell and directly penetrated his and Zhang Xiaotian's bodies. At that moment, purple lightning burst out between the two of them. Han Fei vaguely saw that there seemed to be a wisp of Zhang Xiaotian's soul struggling. Suddenly, the old turtle said, "Not good, this person is the reincarnation of a certain master." Han Fei's hair was all standing up. He could clearly feel that the lightning that fell on him was actually much more powerful than the one that fell on Zhang Xiaotian. Han Fei secretly cursed, "Do you have to talk to me about this now?" At that moment, Han Fei's body was torn apart, his skin was melting, and his hair was evaporating. Even though he was already using the swallowing technique, he still felt that there was terrifying energy inside and outside of his body. Chilla. In Forge the Universe, a tremendous amount of spiritual spring was evaporated, and thousands of spiritual fruits were broken one after another, turning into surging spiritual energy and energy that began to wash Han Fei's body. On the other side, Zhang Xiaotian wasn't any better than Han Fei. Zhang Xiaotian took out a tortoise shell out of nowhere. There were countless interconnected arrays on the tortoise shell, which were carved with 1,000 layers of arrays. Even though the formation was shattering at an alarming rate, Zhang Xiaotian seemed to be trying to survive the lightning strike. Han Fei was wrapped in the purple lightning, and some of his bones were exposed. However, the lightning didn't show any signs of stopping. In all directions, the terrifying power was still descending. Under such circumstances, the two of them couldn't even move, let alone fight. In this case, Han Fei simply didn't move. The swallowing technique was absorbing power crazily. The indestructible body was activated. This time, it was no longer his flesh and blood that were burning, but his bones. The moment the indestructible body was activated, Han Fei suddenly felt that he had encountered the most terrifying pain in the world. Han Fei felt that his bones seemed to have been pressed into grains of sand. The terrifying spiritual energy and energy were polishing the grains of sand, as if the bones were being disassembled and burned. It was extremely painful. Damn it. It hurts. Chapter 1336. Ren Tianfei, you son of AB *TCH, what kind of bullsh *T technique did you create? Han Fei was in so much pain that he began to curse. When he was cultivating the first 4 levels of the indestructible body art, Han Fei felt fine. Although it was extremely painful, and he wanted to curse countless times. When he was cultivating, he even had a feeling that he wanted to die. However, he had never had such a weird feeling like now. It seemed that his bones were really broken into pieces. The feeling of his bones being squeezed into fine sand bit by bit made Han Fei wonder if he could hold it. In addition to the physical pain, the pain in the soul was actually not small at all. After all, Han Fei had cut off half of his soul. Although he wasn't weak in this aspect, it was still a lie to say that he was a peerless genius. At this moment, the demon purification pot began to spin slightly. Last time, the demon purification pot took the initiative to replace Han Fei's spiritual heritage. This time, it seemed that Han Fei could barely bear the power of the 4-9 Kings tribulation, so the demon purification pot only slightly eased the pain on Han Fei's soul. Other than that, there was no reaction. Compared with Han Fei, who was in pain, Zhang Xiaotian was slightly more comfortable. Of course, this so-called comfort was only relative. For ordinary people, you were already a heavenly talent, so you should be strong. In fact, the so-called peerless heavenly talent was just what others said and had no real meaning. However, it was just a form of address. Ordinary people only saw how talented the heavenly talents were, but they didn't see that they were also struggling to move forward carefully. Even a reincarnated body like Zhang Xiaotian had prepared countless treasures when dealing with the 4-9 Kings tribulation. For example, that tortoise shell from before. That chain of thousands of spirit formations was not something that an ordinary person could do. Han Fei also saw that this Zhang Xiaotian had always been a guy who pretended to be weak. That tortoise shell array couldn't have been carved for him by others. This kind of trump card must have been drawn bit by himself and wouldn't have told anyone else. Therefore, this Zhang Xiaotian was actually an array master. His array ability shouldn't be weaker than Han Fei's. If he had enough time to prepare, carving out such a tortoiseshell array would not be easy. Seeing that the tortoise shell formation was on the verge of breaking, Zhang Xiaotian took out a bottle of pills with great difficulty while devouring the lightning energy that was seeping into his body. Han Fei thought to himself, what's the use? Back when he was on Heavenly Heart Island, the Heavenly Heart pill couldn't even block a single lightning bolt for him. He wondered what Zhang Xiaotian was holding. A red pill was swallowed by Zhang Xiaotian in a single gulp. Then, the space he was in was engulfed by raging flames. The walls of fire were like blooming fire lotuses, growing larger and larger until they were almost 100 meters wide. Gotcha! However, the tortoise shell suddenly shattered, and the purple lightning bombarded the flame lotus. At this moment, the flame lotus petals withered. Compared with Zhang Xiaotian's well-equipped team, Han Fei's team was reckless. What tortoise shell? What pill? Han Fei only had his own body. At this moment, he felt that his bones were breaking inch by inch, and he was 3 times fatter than before. Half of the resources in his body had been consumed, crazily charging at his body. Of course, there were benefits too, which was that Han Fei's indestructible golden body was strengthening bit by bit. Looking inside himself, Han Fei found that there were always some white spots in his bones. Those spots seemed to be in the process of refining. It would take a terrifying amount of resources to refine a bone the size of a grain of sand from translucent white to pale gold. Besides, Han Fei was going to refine a whole body. However, when he refined his body this time, Han Fei realized that his indestructible golden body was getting stronger. For some reason, Han Fei suddenly had a more intuitive feeling in his head. It seemed that his indestructible golden body had been cultivated to 40%. Han Fei immediately realized that he would be able to perceive a lot of power after he comprehended the Tao. At this moment, Han Fei already had a more intuitive feeling about the strength of his indestructible golden body. This lasted for 36 breaths' time before the terrifying bolt of lightning slowly disappeared. During this period of time, Han Fei and Zhang Xiaotian each showed their best skills. Han Fei, who was refining the 5th level of the indestructible body, was trembling all over. His bones had been tempered to more than 40%. Previously, the so-called half-golden body was actually just a golden body with 30% of his bones. This time, stealing one of Zhang Xiaotian's 4 Nine Kings tribulation improved the effect of his indestructible golden body by more than 10%. It was really a big win. Also, after stealing someone's heavenly tribulation, Han Fei felt that his strength had increased a little. However, the improvement was very small, and Han Fei didn't care. At this moment, Han Fei felt that his body was still trembling, and the pain of his bones being crushed hadn't completely faded away. Zhang Xiaotian didn't feel much better either. However, Han Fei had a backup plan. Hundreds of spiritual fruits were hovering in front of him, shattering one after another to provide him with power. Zhang Xiaotian hadn't opened his eyes yet. Han Fei knew that this was a process of the power in his body rapidly changing after the heavenly tribulation. This process was a process of rapid improvement. Han Fei made up his mind, and the void lines appeared and hooked at Zhang Xiaotian. However, the moment the void lines appeared, a lot of purple electric sparks in the air crackled and exploded. Han Fei hurriedly retracted the void lines. The old turtle said, "What's the hurry? The power of the lightning hasn't completely dispersed yet. It will take at least a minute for it to disappear." Han Fei cursed in his heart, no wonder he's so strong. There's still a wisp of his soul in his body. It turns out that he's the reincarnation of an expert. The old turtle said, "A reincarnation will always be a reincarnation. It means that this Zhang Xiaotian has a main body. This main body should still be in a state of struggling to survive. The key is to cultivate the reincarnation while he's alive. After he completely refines the reincarnation, he can live in it easily and live another life." Han Fei was lost for words. Are all experts like this? What's the difference between being reincarnated left and right and being immortal? Of course there's a difference. A reincarnation is just a reincarnation. He has advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is that he can live another life. But let me tell you, a king can only live one more life at most. If he does it again, his origin energy won't be enough for him to reincarnate again. Han Fei was surprised. Really? The old turtle sneered. Otherwise, why do you think so many experts pursue the immortality realm? A king is a king. Although he can live forever, he has a limited lifespan. Of course, some venerables will cultivate reincarnations for themselves. However, those venerables are naive and think that reincarnation is enough. They don't know that it's more difficult for them to become a king if their original power is weakened. Hearing this, Han Fei thought to himself, in that case, this reincarnation isn't completely good. Reincarnating once, apart from being able to live one more life, Who could say that the path that was not completed in the first life would be completed in the second life? Suddenly, Zhang Xiaotian slowly opened his eyes. It had only been 2 minutes. Han Fei hadn't recovered his body yet, so he could only baptize himself with spiritual energy. 8 seconds could only reduce Han Fei's size by half at most. But even if he was half, Han Fei was still 3 times fatter than before. Of course, Han Fei was digesting it too. Not only was he digesting it, but he also cast the holy light technique on himself. He wanted to recover quickly and return to his peak combat power. Zhang Xiaotian looked at Han Fei coldly. Human, Han Fei. Seeing Zhang Xiaotian's dark expression, Han Fei grinned. That's right. You found out. I saved you once and helped you pass the 4-9 King tribulation, but you don't even feel grateful? Is that right? Zhang Xiaotian was too lazy to argue with Han Fei. He said, I've passed the 4-9 King tribulation. Even if you snatched half of the lightning, it doesn't make you invincible. Han Fei sneered. Don't worry. It's enough to kill you. 2 minutes later, Zhang Xiaotian recovered first. After all, he didn't bear that much power of the purple heavenly tribulation, so he recovered first. Chilla. Seeing the 9 blood-colored spears appear again, Zhang Xiaotian didn't intend to hold back at all. Clang! The infinity water turned into thousands of knives and blocked the 9 blood-colored spears. Crack, crack, crack! This time, 3 of the 9 blood-colored spears crushed the infinity water. Zhang Xiaotian's eyes were cold. Unfortunately, you lost. Die. Explode. When the 9 spears were about to reach Han Fei, the infinity water suddenly exploded. Zhang Xiaotian didn't have time to react. The 2 of them were very close to each other. Bang, 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 bang. 3 of the 9 blood-colored spears shattered in succession. Han Fei and Zhang Xiaotian were both blown back more than 100 kilometers. Could he block the 9 blood-colored spears again? Han Fei knew it wouldn't be that easy. Looking at the 9 blood-colored spears that broke the explosion, a King Kong appeared behind Han Fei again. Moo! Han Fei knew that the King Kong couldn't block the 9 blood-colored spears. However, with a thought, he activated the Tao Seed, and the King Kong's power skyrocketed. With a slap, it shattered a blood-colored spear. However, that palm was also shattered. In the next step, the King Kong used its body as a shield, and the broken hand became one. With a clang, the Vajra King Kong was torn into pieces. After all, it couldn't block the 9 blood-colored spears of Zhang Xiaotian, who was in the Tao-seeking state. However, at this moment, Han Fei's body had recovered to twice its original size. The numbness in his bones had quickly receded. Seeing the 9th spear coming at him, Han Fei stretched out his hand, took out the embroidery needle, and pushed it horizontally with his palm. With another clang, Han Fei retreated more than 10 kilometers, but he managed to resist the so-called 9th blood-colored spear. Zhang Xiaotian was shocked. How strong is Han Fei exactly? Last time, it seemed that he resisted the 9 blood-colored spears with great difficulty. This time, although he hadn't completely consolidated his strength had doubled, and the 9 blood-colored spears were still blocked. It was even easier than last time. Han Fei suddenly raised his head and grinned. What, do you have any other methods? Chapter 1337. This was the first time in Zhang Xiaotian's life that his heart had been shaken. In the past, he often looked down on others from the perspective of a god. The so-called modesty was actually disdain. The reason why he was stuck at 4th place on the prodigy roll was only to motivate those behind him. He had never taken it to heart. The Fish Dragon King that Han Fei played only caught Zhang Xiaotian's attention. In his eyes, the so-called heavenly talent was no match for his 9 bloody spears. But now, Han Fei, as a junior explorer, had blocked his 9 bloody spears twice in a row, and was not injured at all. Zhang Xiaotian's expression was grave. There were precious treasures here, and he had been forced to undergo his tribulation just because he had devoured some of the water in this place. In the end, the tribulation of the 4-9 monarchs came right away. If he had not been prepared for the tribulation of the 4-9 monarchs would not have been easy to pass. Even though he had prepared so much, if Han Fei hadn't come, he would have been severely injured by the tribulation of the 4-9 monarchs. Therefore, although Han Fei robbed part of the heavenly tribulation, Zhang Xiaotian was able to pass it smoothly. At this moment, Zhang Xiaotian's heart skipped a beat. Even though he had only heard of the Shuemu sky producing a supreme genius who had passed the 4-9 monarch tribulation, he did not pay much attention to it. They thought that Han Fei was just lucky or had the help of many quasi-experts to pass the tribulation successfully. Now it seemed that Han Fei really lived up to his reputation. If he hadn't passed the tribulation successfully, Han Fei might have crushed him and killed him. Zhang Xiaotian had just transcended his tribulation and was in urgent need of stabilizing his cultivation. However, there was obviously a great fortune in this treasured land, so how could he let it go? Dong dong dong. Black holes of different sizes suddenly appeared around Zhang Xiaotian. He said, "Shui Mu Tian, Han Fei, I'll remember you. But this is the end." Swish, swish, swish. The big and small black holes were like rotating black holes in the air, smashing directly at Han Fei. Shwa shwa shwa. Han Fei flashed several times, only to see that the black hole followed him like a shadow. It turned out to be a spatial technique, and it was a space-time attack that ignored space itself. Rip! Han Fei hurriedly waved his hand and threw out more than 20 great plate turtle array diagrams. The array was activated. He watched as the spatial spiral exploded with loud bangs. To Han Fei's horror, the 20 great plate turtle arrays only destroyed 8 void spirals. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaotian turned around and ran into the mountains, widening the distance between them in the blink of an eye. Han Fei snorted. "Want to compete with me in speed? So what if I let you take a breath?" Sword drawing technique. Infused with spiritual energy, Snowmorn burst out and became as bright and smooth as a bright moon, drawing an arc in the air. With a single move, he destroyed the remaining 5 void spirals. Stellar transposition. Regarding the dragon Yuan Qi, that powerful warrior in the desolate grave had personally told him that they were both humans. Under the circumstances that he had fed so much, that figure had no reason to deceive him. At the moment of crossing the void, Han Fei's eyes were full of cracks in the void, and several streaks of light in the void brushed past him dangerously. Han Fei knew that it was the so-called void turbulence. Once he was involved in it, no one knew where he would appear, or if he could appear again. Han Fei activated the Tao Seed and imagined that there was a hole in the void in front of him. He shortened the void boundary and appeared directly on the mountain. Zhang Xiaotian cursed inwardly. Han Fei was indeed fierce. His sickle of nirvana had been blocked in an instant. He had only just escaped, but Han Fei was already gone. Of course, he knew that Han Fei was fast, but even if he was fast, he had to leave a trail, right? But now, Zhang Xiaotian couldn't find Han Fei at all, even though a streak of light shot out from the center of his eyebrows. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaotian's pupils constricted. 50 kilometers in front of him, a hole appeared in the void and Han Fei stepped out. Zhang Xiaotian's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He immediately turned around to look. "How the F***ck did you get here when we were only 150 kilometers apart?" Zhang Xiaotian had always believed that he was talented enough. After his reincarnation, he had been constantly tempering himself to achieve his current accomplishment. Even so, he didn't dare to cross the void at this time. It might be possible for him to walk 10 kilometers, but Han Fei walked more than 150 kilometers in one go. Was he kidding? Not to mention Zhang Xiaotian, all the venerables, even the White Armor Emperor and the Life Queen were stunned. "You dare to cross the void turbulence? Aren't you afraid that you'll disappear?" Han Fei turned around and grinned. "I've been nice to you, haven't I? You want to leave in front of me? 10,000 swords returned to origin. Han Fei stretched out his finger, and 10,000 swords appeared in the sky. Water vapor filled the air, and 10,000 swords swept across the sky. Swish, swish, swish. When the swords merged into one, Zhang Xiaotian finally revealed his true form. He reached out a tentacle covered in a thick cyan shell, trying to attack Han Fei. However, Han Fei ignored it and stood in Zhang Xiaotian's way. He roared, "Beast King Technique, soul suppression of 100 beasts." Han Fei's true form suddenly expanded to almost double its original size. He opened his mouth and sucked energy into his body. All sorts of wondrous sounds filled this roar. In the next second, hundreds of strange beasts that Zhang Xiaotian had never seen or heard of danced through the air, their cries echoing out toward Zhang Xiaotian. Facing Zhang Xiaotian, Han Fei held the sacrificing punch. He roared, "Come on, try using your 9 spears again. I'll blow you up today." Pooh! Zhang Xiaotian vomited a mouthful of blood. He seemed to have been injured by the soul suppression of 100 beasts. However, as a reincarnated expert, Zhang Xiaotian reacted very quickly. Seeing the sacrificing punch, he quickly retreated. For real experts, life and death were only a thin line, so they were very sensitive to danger. Seeing Han Fei's ferocious attack, he retreated again and again. However, several octopus tentacles extended from all directions and slapped violently. Rumble, the tentacles collapsed, and Zhang Xiaotian's 9 arms merged and stabbed forward. Boom! A violent explosion swept across a radius of more than 50 kilometers, directly flattening a mountain under their feet, completely shattering the ground. Pooh! Cough, cough, Zhang Xiaotian vomited another mouthful of blood. He was rather speechless. What kind of monster is this? Han Fei was also slightly surprised. After so many years, few people in the same realm could compete with him. Although Zhang Xiaotian didn't dare to fight him head-on, he took his most powerful attack head-on. Of course, this was just one of Han Fei's attacks. However, this further showed the horror of reincarnated experts. Of course, Han Fei wasn't doubting himself. First of all, it was obvious that Zhang Xiaotian was no match for him. Secondly, he had lost half of his soul and wasn't at his peak. Otherwise, he could easily crush Zhang Xiaotian to the ground. Knowing that he was no match for Han Fei, Zhang Xiaotian chose to retreat. Opportunities were important, but not as important as his life. Seeing Zhang Xiaotian retreat, Han Fei's lips curled. Fuse. Han Fei didn't hesitate. Zhang Xiaotian was using this place to pass the tribulation, and this place was filled with dragon might. If his guess was right, Zhang Xiaotian had already obtained an opportunity. If he didn't feel the aura of an opportunity, Han Fei would immediately turn around and kill Zhang Xiaotian on the spot. In Han Fei's opinion, since there was something as good as the Dragon King Qi, it had to be his. Otherwise, he would be the strongest in the world. Sure enough, when Little Black and Little White fused and the yin-yang divine eyes appeared, Han Fei immediately felt a great opportunity. He turned his gaze to the south of the mountain range. Han Fei stood proudly in the void. Before he moved, he looked around, only to find that the mountains were endless, and a strange power in the south was inexplicably calling him. Han Fei couldn't stand it anymore. Ordinary people might not be able to tell the general trend of the mountains, but Little White could. Little White could. Little White could tell whether it was a blessing or a curse. Although he really wanted to kill Zhang Xiaotian, the Dragon Essence Qi was more important than Zhang Xiaotian. It was just a reincarnated body that had passed the 4-9 King tribulation. In terms of reincarnated bodies, Bai Suzhen was not inferior to Zhang Xiaotian. At that time, Han Fei was still at his peak, and he was on par with Bai Suzhen. However, in a battle to the death, neither of them was a match for him. No matter how little experience they had, it was nothing to be afraid of. In the outside world, Chang Shui Qin shouted again, "King, Han Fei has exceeded the combat strength limit of this trial. He should withdraw. In their eyes, Han Fei was too strong. Both of them had passed the 4-9 King tribulation, but Han Fei had passed it for half a year, while Zhang Xiaotian had passed it for less than half a day. Chang Shuai-Qin and the others naturally didn't want to see such a talent die in the capital city. However, the White Armor Emperor didn't say anything. Not far in front of him, the Life Queen said indifferently, Zhang Xiaotian's strength has clearly exceeded the scope of this trial, but he still went. Everyone has selfishness. Since the rules have been set, it's better not to break them. What do you think? The White Armor Emperor cursed in his heart. Even he had underestimated Han Fei's strength. Even Zhang Xiaotian, who had hidden so far, couldn't stop him. It could be seen how strong Han Fei was. However, he was injured first, and the White Shell capital city had lost several people, and many had been seriously injured. It was really inappropriate to start a war now because of this. In any case, even if Han Fei really obtained that opportunity, so what? It was true that one could become stronger by relying on opportunities, but no one could become a king by relying on opportunities all the way. Seeing that the king didn't say anything, Chang Shuai-Qin reluctantly gave up on this request. On the island, Han Fei flew all the way, but when he was only 1 mountain away from the strange place, he suddenly saw a headless female corpse in white clothes looking at him from the top of the mountain, on the bare boulder on the top of the mountain where the vegetation had withered. This scene was very strange. There was no head, only a severed neck. However, the next moment, the woman's action almost scared Han Fei to the point of peeing his pants. The woman seemed to have sensed Han Fei's presence. She grabbed a head from the void and put it on her neck. Chapter 1338. This phenomenon was very weird. In this mountain range, all the mountains were lush, and occasionally there were wild beasts roaring. However, the mountain in front of Han Fei was located among the mountains and was barren. If it was just barren, Han Fei would probably guess that there was some kind of creature or treasure in this mountain that could deprive vitality. However, when he saw the headless female corpse, he was shocked. First of all, this female corpse was too ugly. The female sea demons looked like women, and even the inferior manfish looked a bit like humans. But this Nuba's skin was wrinkled all over, and she was very thin, so thin that some of her skin was just hanging on her body. When the headless female corpse pulled her head out of the void, Han Fei knew that things were not going well. Sure enough, the headless female corpse took a step forward and directly stood in front of him. And in Han Fei's eyes, the headless female corpse's information magically appeared. Name Nuba. Introduction: a woman born in some extremely hot places. Because she was born in the shocking flames, she died young and became a Nuba. Nuba likes to wear cyan clothes, but wherever she goes, the vegetation will wither, so she has a strong nature. The Nuba is calcined day and night by a strange fire, so few creatures in the world can match her physique. Level 79 Law Enforcement, Withering Fire, Spiritual Energy 159808, Realm Sea Demon, Combat Skills, Cyan, Fearless, Unabsorbable. Remarks: once the Nuba comes to a place with lush vegetation, she wants to make cyan clothes. Han Fei looked at the Nuba's description with a dumbfounded expression. Everything else was easy to explain, except that this Nuba was a kind of drought demon, and wherever she went there would be a great drought. But why did this Nuba like to make clothes? Fortunately, this Nuba was only a level 79 creature, in the peak level or half-king realm. Han Fei looked up and couldn't help but say, "Didn't you say that some special creatures have been wiped out? Who is this? Isn't she afraid that I'll be slapped to death by her?" Hearing Han Fei's complaint, the Insect King and the Life Queen looked strange. The two of them said in their hearts, "You still have the face to say that in order for you to enter, we withdrew 10 people. Moreover, the mountains there were bare before. Could you not see that the creature had just appeared?" At this moment the Life Queen said, "That's a half-king level creature. It shouldn't have appeared." White Armor Emperor shouted, "Mu Wuhua, are you going to cheat in front of me?" That creature is extremely powerful, but we didn't notice it before. Now that creature has jumped out, this matter involves the fated chance itself, shouldn't it appear? Zhang Xiaotian was no match for Han Fei and was forced to retreat. At that time, the white armored arch and the others had nothing to say. After all, Zhang Xiaotian had indeed hidden his strength. But at this moment, the Life Queen was unhappy that Han Fei had encountered a semi-venerable creature. If she wanted Han Fei to retreat, the White Armor Emperor would naturally be unhappy. At this moment the old turtle said, "This is a demi-venerable drought demon. If I'm not mistaken, her physique must be stronger than yours. I'm afraid you can't beat her." Han Fei raised his eyebrows. "Stronger than me? How much stronger than me?" The old turtle said, "Drought demons are very special creatures. All drought demons cultivate their bodies. When they reach a certain level, they will return to the inheritance of some great demons. At that time, their physiques will be even more terrifying. Under normal circumstances, if you want to see the physique of a drought demon, you can challenge it. For example, this drought demon's physique is probably comparable to that of a beginner venerable. And a half-king level drought demon can fight against a king." The corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched. "It's a cross-level challenge. Don't make it sound like it's some big deal." The old turtle said angrily, "What do you know? The path of physical cultivation is extremely difficult, so the cultivation of a drought demon is very difficult. Since a drought demon can appear here, it means that there must be an alien flame or a land of great drought here. Only such a place can support a creature like the drought demon." Han Fei frowned. "An alien flame?" The old turtle said, "Forget about the alien flame. Let's go around it first. Don't make an enemy of such a creature." Han Fei thought to himself, "Old Yuan, I realized that it's really easy for you to talk while lying down. This Nuba has been staring at me for a long time, and you want me to go around her? The place of dragon power is on the short mountain behind her. How can I go around it?" Han Fei thought that if he used the star teleportation technique again, he might be able to go around a little. But this was a half-king level creature anyway. What if this drought demon was not afraid of the void and also went in? Wouldn't it be over in minutes if it fought with him in the void? Even if he could defeat it, he couldn't fight in the void. He wouldn't do that, but this drought demon might. So Han Fei set up a stealth array, a concealment array, and a breath-concealing array on himself. He stealthily moved to another mountain peak and hid for a while, preparing to sneak into that mountain. Han Fei carefully stepped on the bare mountain top and looked at the drought demon every once in a while. When he passed more than 2,000 meters away from the drought demon, he let out a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, this creature's head needs to be hit again, which means that its brain may be seriously damaged. But just when Han Fei was about to cross this mountain halfway up the mountain, he suddenly saw that the drought demon had been waiting for him 100 meters away. Han Fei was shocked. He raised his hand and waved his claws with an ugly expression. "Hey!" Swish! As soon as Han Fei said so, the drought demon raised her hand and grabbed at him so fast that a trace of flame was left in the void. Overlord's technique. Han Fei wanted to retreat at that time, but for some reason, he wanted to see the so-called strong physique. This drought demon turned out to be a body refiner, so her strength should not be underestimated. Bam! Puff! Gotcha! A golden fist mark collided with the drought demon, and Han Fei almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Han Fei's figure was directly hammered into the mountainside of another mountain, and a large part of the mountain collapsed. Han Fei was horrified. What AF *king terrifying power! Although he used his strength in a hurry, he shouldn't have been blasted from one mountain to another, right? Han Fei hurriedly cast a holy light technique on himself to repair the dislocated and broken bones. But suddenly, a large number of demon plants in the deep forest on this mountain that had been smashed by him suddenly began to burn, and some directly withered and then burned again. In the heavy flames, Han Fei saw that on the other side of the fire, the drought demon seemed to be rummaging for something. Han Fei wondered, what is it looking for? Didn't we agree to fight? The drought demon let out a low roar, and at some point, she was holding a relatively special grass in her hand. The flames on Nuba's body rolled up, and the demon plant that was relatively green just now was directly burned by her. Han Fei seemed to understand why the drought demon wanted to make green clothes. With your high temperature, which is comparable to the temperature in magma, how can you make clothes? You've almost burned a whole mountain to the ground. Just how much obsession do you have in your heart? Han Fei found that the flames on the drought demon showed a dark yellow color, which was a very strange color, but gradually became the color of fire. Ho! The drought demon was roaring because she had just made a set of clothes for herself, but it was smashed and melted in an instant, which made her very angry. Seeing this, Han Fei was shocked and immediately wanted to retreat, thinking that he would come back after making a set of clothes. But when Han Fei was about to leave, he saw that the drought demon suddenly appeared 100 meters away from him. Han Fei said, "Girl, let's talk. We are all civilized people. Look at me, I won't run away." Seeing that the drought demon was indifferent, Han Dun immediately told her his plan. Han Fei said, "Do you really want a set of green clothes?" The drought demon spat out flames, which looked very weird. She stared at Han Fei and seemed to be waiting for his next words. Then Han Fei said, "I'll make clothes for you and you'll let me go? This is a fair exchange." The drought demon nodded directly, which stunned Han Fei. "Why didn't you say so earlier? Why didn't you say so earlier?" Clang, clang, clang. Han Fei didn't move but took out the refining table, the war hammer, and many special crystals. The old turtle asked, "What are you doing?" Not only the old turtle, but everyone outside was also dumbfounded. What the hell is this? Is he starting to refine weapons instead of climbing the mountain? But the point was that the drought demon was still nodding. Could it be that Han Fei was making weapons for the drought demon? The insect king thought to himself, "What the hell are you doing? Do you know that other places are in an uproar?" On this island, many creatures were gathering and rushing over. There were super big birds hovering in the sky, big crocodiles crawling out of the river, a large number of beasts, insects, and even a large number of fruits, all of which were jumping and rushing towards this mountain range. Except for these creatures, it was impossible for the people of the three forces not to notice the changes here. Therefore, at this moment, almost most of the masters of the three forces on the island were rushing here. And Han Fei quickly raised a green weapon and said, "Girl, what do you think? Does it fit? If it doesn't, I'll adjust the size for you." Third update. Asking for votes. Taking photos outside. Updated in advance. End of this chapter. Chapter 1339. Han Fei didn't know why the Nuba liked to wear green clothes. Maybe it was because the lush vegetation and forest materials he saw in the information he received might not be enough for her to burn. Han Fei was already good at forging weapons. He believed that the style of the green clothes he made must be the most fashionable of the contemporary era, with green light flowing and multicolored embellishments. According to the power that the Nuba could emit, it shouldn't be able to burn a low-quality divine weapon in a short time, right? Swish. The Nuba's figure flashed and came to Han Fei. Han Fei obviously felt that the Nuba was not hostile at this moment, so he didn't run at all. Sure enough, the Nuba stood in front of Han Fei and took the battle suit from his hands with both hands. However, at the moment when the Nuba took the battle suit, Han Fei suddenly stepped back. But he was still a step too late. The Nuba followed up with a palm and pressed on Han Fei's chest. Bam! Han Fei was smashed directly into the belly of the mountain, and most of the mountain collapsed and rocks rolled down. Puff! This time, Han Fei was really slapped until he spat out a mouthful of blood. What the hell is this power? Han Fei thought that his strength was already extremely terrifying, but he was still far inferior to this Nuba. Although the gap between the realms was nothing, he had the Beast King art and his explosive power was extremely terrifying. But even so, with his strength, he still felt dizzy and disoriented in front of Nuba. The old turtle said, "Brat, why did you make clothes for this Nuba? Why did Nuba agree?" Han Fei cursed. "Didn't you see the spiritual plant in her hand just now? It looks like a green dress." The old turtle was silent for a long time. "I don't know whether I should say you are smart or stupid," Han Fei complained. "If you have something to say, just say it. The Nuba is coming." He heard the old turtle said, "Consider yourself lucky that you have found a way to make this Nuba give up. But what the Nuba wants is not the clothes, but the vitality contained in the spiritual plant. You can even see that she wants to wear clothes. Can't you see this?" Han Fei was speechless. "I don't know anything." Bam! The mountain was blasted open, and Nuba stood on a piece of rubble not far away, staring at Han Fei coldly. Sensing the killing intent, Han Fei immediately roared, "Miss, please wait a moment. I made a mistake just now. Wait a moment. I'll make another one for you." When Nuba attacked him just now, the low-quality divine battle suit that Han Fei had just refined was crushed by her palm. Sure enough, when the Nuba heard that he was going to make clothes again, she stopped again. Outside the island, all the onlookers were puzzled. What was Han Fei going to do? What kind of joke was making clothes? Han Fei was holding 2 sledgehammers. Clang! Dozens of materials floated in the air, and Han Fei jumped up and hammered. Han Fei struck from the air, and the 100 battles hammer hammered from a mountain to the bald mountain just now. Han Fei looked back, only to be horrified. The whole mountain where he was just now was on fire at some point. Nuba didn't stop Han Fei from moving, but she kept standing 100 meters in front of Han Fei. Just now, the old turtle's words reminded Han Fei that what she wanted to wear was not blue clothes, but the life essence condensed from the vitality of spiritual plants. At this moment, the battle suit took shape, and Han Fei threw out a drop of the spring of life without hesitation. At the moment when the spring of life was poured into the battle suit, Nuba was already 30 meters away from Han Fei. She was very excited. Outside the island, the white armor emperor's face was ugly. "Muwuhua, how dare you? Has the spring of life reached the point where even a junior can use it at will? It seems that for this landing battle, you've paid a lot." The Life Queen was speechless. Was this the only use of her spring of life in Han Fei's hands? To break through the obstacles? However, on the surface, the Life Queen looked indifferent. She just smiled lightly and didn't even look at the white armor emperor. Discerning people were not blind. The moment the spring of life appeared, and the moment Nuba was moved, they knew that what Nuba really wanted was not the battle suit, but the spring of life. A drop of the spring of life represented 100 years of life, but this was not absolute. It depended on the strength and level of the user. At Nuba's level, 100 years of life could be said to be extremely valuable. When Han Fei's hammer fell for the last time, Han Fei didn't immediately give the battle suit to Nuba. Instead, he said seriously, "I'll give you the blue suit, but I have to go over." Hearing this, Nuba hesitated for a long time, but in the end, she still couldn't resist the temptation of the spring of life. She directly stepped aside. Han Fei's face immediately lit up with joy. He threw the blue suit to Nuba with one hand and kicked out. The moment Han Fei left, Nuba didn't chase after him. Instead, she immediately put on the blue suit. However, Han Fei didn't look at this scene. At that moment, he saw Nuba's flesh and blood grow rapidly. The drop of the spring of life in the blue suit was being consumed rapidly. Of course, what happened next was none of Han Fei's business. Han Fei didn't know how long the blue suit could last. At this moment, Han Fei finally came to the mountain behind Nuba. Normally, there was nothing special about the mountain. But there was a huge crack on the mountain, which was nearly 100 meters wide and dozens of meters wide in the middle of the mountain. This hole didn't seem to be anything special, but the dragon power Han Fei felt at this moment came from the sharp hole. It was very likely that before Zhang Xiaotian's tribulation, there had been no abnormalities here. Standing at the entrance, Han Fei had a strong sense of crisis in his heart. It seemed that there was some danger waiting for him in this crack. However, he had already come here. A drop of the spring of life had been used up, and nearly half of the resources in Forge the Universe had been consumed. Han Fei would never be willing to retreat so easily. So, Han Fei only paused at the entrance of the cave for a while, and then immediately crawled into the crack. As soon as he passed through the crack, Han Fei felt as if he had entered a special place. There was a special barrier that completely blocked his perception. As a result, the whole space was opened up into a small world. The old tortoise said, "Huh? I knew it. There are more than one place covered by the heavenly secrets. The heavenly secrets here are also chaotic. Once you enter, the outside world won't know what's going on. In such an environment, even a king can't peep at you." At this moment, Han Fei was standing in front of a cave covered with quartz crystals. The crystals were colorful and beautiful. Just by looking at the cave, one could tell that it was extraordinary. With a radius of more than 50 meters, it was like a snake cave. Who could really be indifferent to it? At this moment, Han Fei just felt that he was shivering all over, as if there was something dangerous in this cave. In fact, through Little White's keen perception, Han Fei actually sensed danger. All of a sudden, Han Fei felt mentally exhausted. It was really a series of tests. How King lucky did he have to be to pick up the dragon origin chi at just the right time? While communicating with the old tortoise, Han Fei stepped into the cave. The danger was a little different from what he had imagined. Even when Han Fei walked out of the cave, he didn't encounter any danger. After walking in the cave for about 5 minutes, Han Fei finally walked to a huge place that looked like an underground square. Here, Han Fei finally felt the danger. The place where Han Fei was still under heavy pressure, and Han Fei felt that it was getting heavier and heavier. At this moment, Han Fei's eyes narrowed. Although the underground space was full of quartz crystals, the first thing Han Fei looked at were the 2 stone statues. Or rather, the only thing here that seemed to be man-made were the 2 identical stone statues. This was a strange creature that looked like a dragon but wasn't a dragon, like a dog but wasn't a dog. It wasn't a Qilin, but rather had a human face. Before Han Fei asked, the old tortoise said, "These are 2 stone statues of ancient dongs. I know this kind of creature. Although there are not many of them, there are some." Han Fei couldn't help but walk up and take a closer look, in case these 2 stone statues were made of special materials. However, when Han Fei approached one of the stone statues, information appeared in his eyes. Name Stone Puppet Introduction: a special creature transformed from the power of hope of the real ancient dongs. It was a Ba when it was alive and pulled the chariot for the Emperor. Because it followed the Emperor all its life, it was unparalleled arrogance. Today, the Emperor went out but didn't return. The dongs died without eating, and their power of hope remained, hoping for the Emperor's return. Level greater than 79, Law Enforcement, Withering Fire, Spiritual Energy 188256, Realm, Seeking Battle Skills, Devour Vitality, Dragon Roar, Unabsorbable. Remarks: do not enter the Emperor's territory, or the stone puppet will wake up. When he saw this information, Han Fei was shocked. This was AF** King creature evolved from a Ba. And this was AF** King exotic beast that pulled the chariot for the Emperor. From the information, Han Fei suspected that the so-called Emperor was actually an azure dragon. Gotcha. As soon as Han Fei finished reading this information, he suddenly heard a crisp crack in this underground space. Han Fei. Chapter 1340. Han Fei was just wondering why a stone statue could display information. At this moment, Han Fei was speechless. The eyes of the 2 stone puppets were filled with fiery red flames, and their bodies were covered with cracks. However, just because they were covered with cracks didn't mean that something would come out of these stone statues. The cracks on the stone puppet's body seemed to have exposed its meridians, and the flames immediately filled these cracks and covered its entire body. Roar! Roar! The two big stone puppets suddenly roared at the sky, spewed fire pillars from their mouths, and came back to life. It was not the revival of life, but more like they felt the aura of an outsider, so some kind of power made them revive spontaneously. Son of AB*TCH, are they 2.5 venerables? Fortunately, this was a small world and the heavenly secrets were chaotic, so Han Fei was not too shocked. With a thought in his mind, Yu Wendao appeared. Han Fei said, "Old Turtle, you and Yu Wendao deal with one, and I will deal with the other." The old turtle said helplessly, "Do you think you can withstand the power of a venerable semi-venerable? If I'm not mistaken, the ancient giant Qi is stronger than the Nuba in terms of strength, physique, and combat power." Han Fei thought to himself, "Do I need you to tell me that? I've already seen that the amount of spiritual energy, the power of law enforcement, and combat skills are better than the Nuba just now." Han Fei gritted his teeth. "Let's fight first. If you can't beat me, let my junior sister out. And that Zhang Yao has already become a venerable and can be used by me. However, I would like to fight them personally. I want to see if my physique is weaker or stronger than that of these ancient living beings." When facing the Nuba just now, although Han Fei was beaten, there were many people watching at that time, so Han Fei didn't really use his full strength. At this moment, no one could see. If Han Fei still didn't dare to fight, he would look too cowardly. If he needed help from others, how could he survive in the outside world in the future? Fuse. Devil Change. Beast King Technique. Sacrificing Punch. Han Fei's body suddenly expanded. The two stone puppets were not small, only more than 20 meters in size. Han Fei didn't completely fight in his original body, but turned into a big ape. Buzz, a fist the size of a water tank burst out with a strange red light as the sacrificial punch blasted out towards a stone puppet. There was a saying that went, "Take his life while he's down." Although the stone puppet hadn't fully recovered, Han Fei didn't believe that this kind of creature was invincible. Just like that, its entire body split open, shining with red light, as if it was a vicious dog that walked out from hell. And their eyes were as if they wanted to eat him. How could Han Fei give them a chance to attack? As soon as he came up, he went all out. On the other side, the black fog pervaded. Yu Wendao had already charged into the black fog. The old tortoise and Yu Wendao worked together to trap one of them. There was a loud bang and a rumbling sound. The stone puppet, which was more than 20 meters long, was punched from the end of the underground cave and rolled dozens of times on the ground. Wherever it passed, the quartz crystals were broken, and the ground was crushed into a long ravine. Han Fei thought to himself, "Fortunately, this thing has just been resurrected. Otherwise, it wouldn't be easy for me to defeat it." Even so, Han Fei didn't dare to waste any time. The moment the stone puppet flew out, he had already caught up with it, holding Snowmorn in his hand, not giving the stone puppet any chance at all. As he expected, when a ravine thousands of meters long was created in the cave, the stone puppet rolled and shook its body, trying to get up. Han Fei was stunned to see this. How can you still crawl and jump after such a powerful punch? Slash. Swish. The sword drawing technique was used on the stone puppet's neck, and there were only flashes of sparks. However, the stone puppet's neck was not chopped off. Instead, a large wound was cut open, and red flames spurted out of it. Han Fei couldn't sense the flames at all. They were gathering and entangling Han Fei. Withering fire? Perhaps because the time was too short, the stone puppet couldn't use its power in time, and Han Fei had the time to attack. However, the stone puppet was only slightly wounded. Swish. Han Fei flashed and appeared on the other side, avoiding the withering fire. At that moment, the infinity water swished into the wound on the stone puppet's neck. Explode. Boom. Right inside the stone puppet's body, a shock wave suddenly spread out, crushing the quartz crystals in all directions into powder in an instant. The stone puppet, on the other hand, was smoking. From its mouth to its eyeballs, all its pores were releasing scorching heat and black smoke. Seeing this scene, Han Fei was dumbfounded. He knew that body-tempering experts were strong, but he didn't expect that body-tempering experts could be so strong. The infinity water. It exploded inside the stone puppet, but it only caused less than 10 wounds. Perhaps the stone puppet had used those holes as air vents, for it actually let out a roar and jumped up again. Collect. Han Fei stretched out a hand and fastened all the void lines on the stone puppet. However, the stone puppet's willpower was too strong, or its realm was much higher than Han Fei's. Once Han Fei tried to control its body, the stone puppet's soul would resist. Its struggle was so strong that Han Fei bled from his eyes, nose, mouth, and mouth. However, compared with its physical body, the stone puppet's soul was relatively easy to deal with, because Han Fei sensed that the residual energy of the stone puppet, which he didn't know whether it was a soul or a will, was actually very little. The reason why it was difficult to deal with was that its willpower was too strong and its power was too firm. Even though he had attached all the void lines to it, he still felt it was difficult to control it again and again. During the struggle, it even opened its big mouth full of sharp teeth and let out a dragon roar. Ho! Seeing that the sound waves were almost vibrating, Han Fei immediately activated the 100 Beasts' soul-suppressing roar. Otherwise, Han Fei was afraid that his soul would be damaged. Ho! The dragon roar and the 100 Beasts' soul-suppressing roar burst out at the same time, and golden blood spurted out from Han Fei's eyes, nose, mouth, and mouth. Bam! Bam! But compared to the stone puppet, Han Fei was still fine. He only bled from his eyes, nose, mouth, and mouth. However, the stone puppet's 2 burning eyeballs directly exploded. Howl! Han Fei felt a head hit his chest, as if a mountain was pressing down on him, making him stagnate and unable to breathe. At the same time, the stone puppet opened its big mouth and bit on his chest. Rip! His flesh and blood were torn apart, and Han Fei felt his vitality fading. This stone puppet was trying to devour his vitality. Clang! How could Han Fei bear this? He held 2 sledgehammers in his hands and launched a pincer attack. He launched a pincer attack that blasted open the stone puppet's head, and the 100 Battles divine hammer burst forth. Clang, 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 swish, swish, swish. Han Fei's figure flickered rapidly, and the sledgehammers in his hands pounded crazily. In an instant, he had pounded hundreds of times, and the hammers were aimed at the stone puppet's head. In the end, the stone puppet didn't know whether Han Fei had taken the upper hand or its strength was declining. Although Han Fei's hands hurt a little, he could still see that its head was caved in and broken. In an instant, a round of 100 Battles divine hammer bombarded the stone puppet, and the second round began. When it was being bombarded by Han Fei, it couldn't even roar or devour vitality anymore. Only the withering fire still wanted to bloom. But the infinity water was not just for show. It was cutting crazily in its body at this time. The flames couldn't leave its body and were extinguished by the infinity water. Compared with the earth-shattering battle on Han Fei's side, Han Fei saw that in the black mist, Yuandao was bombarded out again and again. In the end, when Yuandao came out again, his body was a little broken and covered with teeth marks. Han Fei asked, "Old Turtle, how are you doing? Can you beat it?" The old turtle replied, "Not bad. Although these 2 stone puppets are strong, they are not difficult to deal with. Its strength lies in its stable belief. As long as you suppress it in all aspects, or your belief is stronger than it. Otherwise, although you are strong, it will not be easy for you to kill it." Han Fei was slightly taken aback. This was not the first time that the old turtle had spoken to him. Although this stone puppet was a semi-venerable creature, it was a stone. It was just controlled by a wisp of will. It had the strength of a semi-venerable creature, but no brains. Therefore, Han Fei could slowly kill it. Now, shortly after the old turtle finished speaking, the black mist faded and Yu Wendao came out of it. And in the black mist, there was only a pile of collapsed stones left. But on Han Fei's side, the 100 battles divine hammer had been hammered for the 8th round. Han Fei had just hammered the stone puppet's head and was a little tired. Suddenly, Han Fei activated the Tao Seed and transmitted a false will of the Great Way to the stone puppet in his mind. The venerable emperor is back. The stone puppet's hollow eyes and ferocious expression immediately began to change. Its dark eyes, which were narrowed viciously, became round, and the ferocious expression on its face also disappeared. Now is the time. Han Fei took the opportunity to hammer down, and the stone puppet suddenly shattered. After the 9th round, the 100 battles divine hammer finally killed the stone puppet. Han Fei sat on the ground, casually wiped the blood on the corner of his mouth, and murmured, "Tao Heart?" Chapter 1341. The 2 stone puppets didn't die. If they didn't die, Han Fei's void lines didn't get any soul from them. After they shattered, Han Fei picked up a stone and squeezed it casually, only to see the stone explode. The old turtle said, "Don't pinch it. It's just an ordinary stone." Hiss. Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. An ordinary stone? I can't even cut an ordinary stone with snowmorn? The old turtle said, "This stone puppet is a bit too strong." These were just 2 ordinary stone statues. They must have been enveloped by the aura of a powerhouse, which was why they were so strong. Even if this emperor were here, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to do this. Han Fei thought to himself, "What are you talking about? It has another name called Wang Di Gui, so even an idiot should know what level its master is at." However, Han Fei was a little shocked. There was an emperor's relic on this random island? Maybe the old turtle was right. Under the influence of the aura of a strong master, even an ordinary stone could be so strong. It was probably related to the Taoist heart that the old turtle mentioned. Rumble, just when Han Fei was about to ask about the Taoist heart, the center of the cave suddenly began to collapse. However, only a small part of the cave collapsed, and a scorching power drifted out from inside. It was abnormally hot and a pressure rushed out. Han Fei didn't dare to be careless. After fighting this stone puppet, he knew that this might be an emperor's relic. If he was careless, he might die on the spot. This had nothing to do with whether he was on the invincible realm or not. No matter how strong he was, he couldn't beat the enemy. With a flash between Han Fei's eyebrows, Little Black and Little White appeared. Han Fei was about to ask Little White what was going on inside, when he saw Little Black jump out with a swish. "Hey, hey, hey, son." Han Fei was speechless. This little guy was getting more and more disobedient. Was it a place where he could rush in casually? The old turtle said, "Come on in. It's so hot. I'm afraid it's an alien fire." Han Fei thought for a moment. It was possible. The Nuba was burned by an alien fire all year round. The question was, where was the alien fire? Now, Little Black had slipped into the hole. He was afraid that there was pure yang energy inside. With a thought, Han Fei took Little White in to forge the universe and followed Little Black into the cave. Buzz. The moment Han Fei stepped into this cave, he immediately felt a dry heat, and there was almost no moisture in the air. In front of him was a scale-shaped cavern. It wasn't very large, only about 100 meters in size. In the center of the cave, there was a golden bead that occasionally emitted a dense red light. Before Han Fei could identify what it was, Little Black had already approached it and was circling it. Han Fei shouted, "Son, don't move. Let me have a look first." Han Fei's first reaction was that this was definitely a natural treasure comparable to the sea ice sand. This was because the temperature here had already exceeded the temperature of the lava lake from before. It was terrifyingly high, over 4,000 degrees Celsius, very similar to the blue sea frozen sand. In the face of such a temperature, Han Fei still didn't panic. This was nothing. He even dared to pierce through the bottom of the lava lake, and the instantaneous temperature was comparable to the surface of the sun. How could he be afraid now? Maybe it was because Han Fei's fire pit was relatively high, or maybe it was because the space of this cave was relatively small, but the temperature difference was not very big except within 10 meters of the bead. When Han Fei approached it, information appeared in his eyes. Name: Fire Dragon Bead. Introduction. This is the life bead of the Fire Dragon clan. When the Fire Dragon dies, the bead can't be stored, and it will automatically evolve and burn until it burns out. The Fire Dragon bead can be used as a rare treasure for fire cultivators. It can be used to refine weapons and cultivate fire resistance. Only fire cultivators can eat it lightly. Effect: if a fire cultivator wears it for a long time, they can cultivate the body of fire, fiery eyes, and other magical powers. Remark: in the state of decay. This Fire Dragon bead has been burning for a long time, and its effect is less than 10%. As soon as he saw this information, Han Fei was shocked. This is the power of less than 10%? Dragon bead? Oh my god, I wonder if I can summon a dragon and make a wish with 7 of them. Of course, Han Fei wasn't that stupid. Although this was not a natural spiritual treasure, he didn't know what this Fire Dragon clan was. However, they were known as the Dragon Clan, and not some other flood dragons or creatures like the great venomous ones. They were real dragons. The old turtle didn't know a dragon at all, so he didn't know this Fire Dragon bead. He just said, "This thing is a fire attribute treasure and looks quite extraordinary. But it's still much worse than blue-white smoothie. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to observe it so closely and still be fine." Han Fei nodded. "I know." Then Han Fei said to Little Black, "Son, can this be eaten? Let's eat it." Little Black responded coolly, "Yes." Little Black opened his mouth wide, and the surrounding hot fire suddenly drilled into Little Black's stomach. The Fire Dragon bead was naturally swallowed by Little Black. On the surface of Little Black's body, the fire was boiling, and from time to time, the fire dispersed in all directions. Then, with a thought from Han Fei, Little White in Forge the Universe seemed to have a reaction. Immediately, Han Fei released Little White. As a result, the 2 little fish, one black and one white, circled each other again and swam like the Tai Chi yin and yang, which was a sign of their advancement. Sure enough, Little Black and Little White flashed and advanced again, and they didn't stop. Judging from this, after this Fire Dragon bead, Little Black and Little White would at least advance to level 65. Han Fei thought it would take some time for this advancement. Since there was no danger here, he sat cross-legged and began to recover from his injuries. While Han Fei was cultivating, the outside world was already in an uproar. Zhang Xiaotian, who was defeated by Han Fei, didn't really leave. As a reincarnated expert, knowing that there were treasures hidden under this mountain, how could Zhang Xiaotian give up so easily? The path taken by Han Fei just now should be the best one. It was a place that had been left. But now, he needed to open a new path by himself. As long as the location was basically confirmed, they would know which path to take after trying it out. In the end, they would be able to get there. So, Zhang Xiaotian blew up a few other mountains. After blasting through 3 mountains in a row, Zhang Xiaotian really managed to open up a path for him. When the last mountain was blown up again, blood energy soared into the sky like a pillar of light. With this disturbance, the other living beings that had been madly converging towards this place, if they didn't have a target before this, then they would have a target. But now they had a target. Outside this dragon vein, all kinds of creatures were gathering. Tens of thousands of beasts were already shuttling between the mountains. Demonic plants emerged from the ground and moved to the depths of the mountain. Giant birds were hovering at low altitude, scanning the mountains. The heavenly talents of the Waterwood Heaven, the Blood Sea Divine Wood City, and the Baibei Royal City had all gathered, but at least half of them had come. These people, without exception, all rushed to the mountain that was blown up by Zhang Xiaotian. In fact, it wasn't just these people. All sorts of creatures were also heading towards that place. This was a typical example of someone clearing the way and the latecomers catching up. About 6 hours later, the cave that was emitting blood energy was already surrounded by a sea of creatures. However, the strange thing was that apart from the geniuses of the three great forces, no other living beings entered the cave. Instead, they were absorbing the blood qi that was seeping out from the cave. In reality, everyone, including Zhang Xiaotian, knew that this blood energy was extraordinary. But heaven's prides were smart and greedy. If even a little bit of blood energy was so extraordinary, how extraordinary would the treasure inside be? Therefore, a large group of people had already rushed in. However, the three parties had formed their own formations. Now that they had suddenly gathered together, they were once again evenly matched. Prawn Yue, Umbrella Chi, and Su Yi were together. The Baibei Royal City had 5 people. The blood demons of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City were extremely sensitive to blood and flesh. Therefore, there were 6 of them gathered here, and there might be even more coming. The Waterwood Heaven had the least people. There were only 3 of them. At this moment, the 3 forces did not make a move. Before them was a long river. This river was not as simple as an ordinary underground river. The water here was red, and there was a thick blood energy on the surface. It looked very strange. More accurately, this should be called the Blood River. Because no one knew where this river led to. Could they cross it? How? Therefore, at this moment, the 11 people from the Baibei Royal City and the Blood Sea Divine Wood City were closing in on the 3 from the Waterwood Heaven. Prawn Yue smiled faintly. Aren't you Zergs always fearless of death? Why don't you dare to cross the river now? A one-horned bug buzz. Humph. We Zergs are fearless, but that doesn't mean we are stupid. This river is filled with blood energy. Our senses cannot penetrate it and we can't see the end. We don't even know where it leads to. Who dares to cross it? Umbrella Chi sneered. Do you think you have a choice? Cross it now or die. Runes flashed under the feet of a blood demon. There are only 3 of you. Do you think you can stop the dozen of us? Just as the 2 sides were arguing, they suddenly turned and looked at the blood river. He could only see a small boat swaying and drifting over. The big bird from the Sky Clan of the Waterwood Heaven was quite knowledgeable. He had seen Han Fei use this kind of thing before. It seemed to be called a boat? Chapter 1342. In the region of Shuemu Heaven, including the creatures on the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, no one had any concept of a ship, let alone the Blood Sea Divine Wood City and the Baibei Royal City. To most cultivators, they had never even heard of a ship. Most of the time, they would occasionally see the existence of a ship in the boundless mysterious realm of the vast sea. However, a ship would either be made of special materials or stored in a special place. Otherwise, it would be corroded after being soaked in water for a long time and nothing would be left. When the big bird saw the ship, it sent a voice transmission, "Follow me." The creatures that could come to the island were at least elite. Who would be willing to wait for death? The big bird and the worm were not stupid. Of course, the 3 of them would not challenge more than a dozen enemies. If they were really that stupid, these people would not have been sent to this island to fight for resources. Swoosh! The big bird suddenly grabbed 2 worms with its claws and flapped its wings. A strong wind blew as it flew toward the ship. Everyone, including Prawn Yue and the others, felt that the ship was very strange. Even though they were elites, they did not recognize it. However, the bird knew what a ship was, so it naturally thought that it was safe. That was why it flew toward it. Where are you going? Come down. When the people from the Blood Sea Divine Wood City and the Baibei Royal City saw that the 3 people from Shuemu Heaven actually dared to fly toward the ship, they thought that the bird had discovered something. How could they give way now? Immediately, 2 people from the Blood Sea Divine Wood City and the Baibei Royal City flew up at the same time. At the same time, he also flew towards the ship. Although the two parties did not know what a ship was, seeing that the 3 people from Shuemu Heaven were flying toward it, it meant that it was safe. Su Yi from the Baibei Royal City, who had just entered the 10th place on the prodigy list, also flew toward the ship. Perhaps he wanted to show off in front of Prawn Yue and the others and gain their recognition, or perhaps he was too proud to enter the prodigy list. As for Prawn Yue, he only threw his spear. The remaining 4 people from the Blood Sea Divine Wood City used their talismans. Flame serpents appeared in the air along with countless saber images that slashed towards the big bird and the others. However, even the giant bird itself did not expect that the moment it grabbed the 2 bugs and flew into the river of blood chi, its wings instantly felt as if they were filled with lead. After flying for less than 1,000 feet, its body began to rapidly descend. Bzzz. The 2 insects that were caught immediately flapped their wings, relieving the pressure on the giant bird. This was the benefit of being a water and wood heavenly spirit. They all had the ability to fly. With the 3 of them flying at the same time, it was much easier. However, this drop was almost irreversible. The 3 of them could only feel the weight on their bodies getting heavier and heavier. The big bird roared, "Burn your blood essence and spiritual energy. Fly over." Who? At that moment, 3 balls of light, burning with chi and blood, flapped their wings frantically and flew toward the small boat thousands of meters away. However, the people who were chasing after the giant bird were different. The problem was, they had no wings. The moment they flew out, someone had already noticed this problem. A person from the White Shell Kingdom had only flown 1,000 feet when he found that his body was sinking uncontrollably. He immediately wanted to turn around and turn back. However, with a clang, he actually crashed into an invisible barrier. Shrimp Yue and Umbrella 7 were dumbfounded. There was actually a barrier here? At this time, Shrimp Yue and Umbrella 7 had already noticed that their attacks had fallen in midair and couldn't hit their opponents at all. Obviously, they had miscalculated. There was indeed a problem with this blood chi river. The person who wanted to come back grabbed onto the glass-like barrier with all his might, but he still slid straight down. He immediately shouted, "Help me!" Apart from Shrimp Yue and Umbrella 7, another person stretched out a long whip, trying to catch that person. However, as soon as the long whip was caught, the person who helped found that he was being pulled over uncontrollably. Shrimp Yue and Umbrella 7 retreated at the same time and pulled together. With a bang, the long whip broke, and the person stopped moving forward. The person who pulled the long whip couldn't fly in the direction of the boat, nor could he go ashore. He almost dragged another person into the water with him. He stepped on the invisible barrier and wanted to go back to chase the boat. Unfortunately, it was too late. Splash! As the first person to fall into the Blood Chi River, everyone's eyes, including the perception of the giant bird at the front, fell on him. However, the moment he crashed into the Blood Chi River, he seemed to be fine. The person suddenly breathed a sigh of relief and shouted, "There's an invisible gravitational force here, I can't fly for long. I'll swim through the water." "Oh no, my leg." Halfway through his sentence, the person's expression suddenly changed and he began to struggle wildly. Umbrella 7 shouted, "What's wrong with your leg?" The person was horrified. As he tried to swim back with his hands, he shouted, "I can't feel my leg at all." However, at this moment, no one was talking to him. This was because everyone saw that the flesh on the person's hands were melting, and the white bones were already visible. Using the strength of his hands, he made part of his body float out of the Blood Chi River. However, this scene was even more horrifying. They saw that the flesh below his chest had all melted, leaving only the white bones. Shrimp Yue's expression was solemn. "There's no hope." Umbrella 7 and the other person had ugly expressions, especially the person who had helped just now. He was covered in cold sweat. What the hell was this place? He had only soaked in the Blood Chi River for a while, and his flesh was gone? This was too horrifying. The giant bird and the two insects in front of them instantly panicked. Suyi was also panicking. What the hell was this? Was the Blood Chi River so horrifying? Among the two blood demons, a large number of curses appeared on the body of one of them. The space around him blurred, and he was sent flying 1,000 meters forward. At this moment, the giant bird was the first to rush onto the boat. He suddenly flapped his wings, and hundreds of long feathers shot out like sharp arrows. One of the insects was about to crash into the Blood Chi River. Fortunately, a large feather shot at his feet. He stepped on the feather, jumped, and finally flew onto the boat. The other insect was slightly better. Even with his own strength, he could rush onto the boat. The moment the two insects came up, the giant bird shouted, "Explode!" Bang, bang, bang! Blood splashed across the sky, and the huge thrust made the boat start to move away at high speed. The few people who had some hope were dumbfounded at this moment. Suyi hollered, "Don't even think about leaving." The other two blood demons, one of whom was not strong enough, screamed, "Sister Wolf, save me!" However, the blood demon in front of her who could cross the void didn't care about her at all. It was a matter of life and death. Who could you blame for not being strong enough? You could only blame yourself for not being strong enough. The one called Sister Wolf looked at Suyi and said, "The one from the White Shell Kingdom, you and I will work together to fight the three of them. Otherwise, none of us can do it." Hearing that, Suyi immediately agreed. As long as he wasn't an idiot, he would agree at this moment. Bang bang! The wave of blood created by the giant bird was broken, and one of the insects buzzed. That scared me to death. That blood demon fell down too. The other insect buzzed. What are you looking at? Don't you see that those two are already chasing after us? The two insects bickered. Poke them down too. Heaven-seeking horn, I'll block it. I'll block your lungs. The giant bird flapped its wings, and with a whoosh it set off a gust of wind. Hundreds of large feathers flew directly toward the blood demon that suddenly escaped. Bang bang bang! Swish! They were all risking their lives. Who didn't have some tricks up their sleeves? The blood demon wanted to block it with the rune armor. In the end, she underestimated the strength of the insect. The horn covered 100 feet in the air, and all its strength was concentrated in this horn. How could she block it so easily? With a bang, the woman was also directly knocked into the long river of blood chi. Suyi, who was also rushing toward the giant bird, was startled. Those who could come to the island were all prodigies. He had just forced his way up. After all, the Ichthyosaur king had killed the 8th to 12th places. It was finally Suyi's turn. In fact, Suyi was still a distance away from the true 10th place on the prodigy roll. The Ichthyosaur king had the close distance technique. The Ichthyosaur king would only need a few steps to snatch the boat. But what about him? A large horn struck horizontally, and several hundred flying feathers swept over as well. To Shui Mutian and the others, they were always willing to sacrifice themselves as long as they could get rid of him. Suyi really wasn't confident that he could fight three at once. However, if he couldn't get on the boat, he would still die. Suyi had no choice but to fight. However, just as he was about to use his whip to break through the horn and use it to force his way through the flying feather formation, he saw another ship in front of him. Suyi's face lit up with joy. But then, he felt terrible. That boat was more than 2,000 meters away from him. But he was less than 6 meters away from the Blood River. He couldn't fly over. With a thought, Suyi tossed a set of battle armor into the river of blood chi. He tapped his foot on the ground and leaped with all his might, shouting, "Explode!" Boom! The giant bird and the insect didn't have time to attack Suyi. They could only shout, "Guard the boat." Suyi used this chance to cross the river and landed on another boat in the blink of an eye. Prawn Yue, Umbrella Chi, and the others watched the blood river quietly. Prawn Yue looked at Suyi, who was controlling the boat in the distance, and said indifferently, "Don't panic. Since there's a second one, there will be a third, a fourth." On the other side, the remaining blood demons were also discussing. They made it clear that they wouldn't move until the boat arrived. The first one, asking for votes. End of this chapter.